But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
It's a flying object, and we don't know what it is. I would hope somebody is checking it out.
It was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
I'm glad the Pentagon is looking at this, because if it poses a threat, I want them on top of it.
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field.
You said there's lights in the sky?
The internet has become the command center for criminals and terrorists.
911, what's your emergency? I need help, please help me!
Aliens won't let it happen. You know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Roswell, Area 51. Alien kept deep under the ground.
1, 0, 1, 1,
self-serving. You're here for a reason. You're listening to Troubled Minds Radio.
Broadcasting live from a secret bunker just off the extraterrestrial highway. Somewhere in the desert sands outside of Las Vegas. From somewhere in space-time, loosely labeled Generation X on planet Earth. And asking questions of you in earnest. Into the digital darkness.
Well, good evening, and welcome to Troubled Minds Radio. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. I keep saying D-Live. We're not streaming on D-Live anymore. And Kick. And we're broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, I figured let's do some monsters. We haven't done monsters or folklore or anything like this in quite some time. And it is one of my favorite topics because, of course, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you slice this idea, monsters are ubiquitous the world over. And they have been, not just in the current time space, think Zozo or Slender Man, like we've talked about recently and also in the past, but think about temporally over the centuries. All over the world, there's always been tales of monsters terrorizing people. Now, of course, you could think of it in terms of cryptids and real monsters, but I'm actually tonight kind of considering the idea of monsters in our head, which I often do, of course, because it's part of this. It's part of what being human is and the psyche of all of these things. Because if we don't look at this and really confront what these things mean, maybe it's a system that's been built in and it's, I don't know, maybe something that we really need to conquer. And until we recognize what's actually happening, maybe the problem is us. Maybe it's on us, not us as a problem, but us as a collective problem, just creating more monsters and kind of reformulating the monster archetype for whatever comes next. Now, the write-up here I did tonight, if you guys want to check it out, it is good tonight. And I'm calling it Trial by Monster, Architecture of Psychic Tension, because it's complicated. There's a lot here, but we'll get into what all that stuff means. But think about it this way as we begin. So the idea of monsters really culturally, temporally, in the past, present, and future are a very human thing. They've been cooked into our ideas, baked into our ideas. I always want to say cooked. It's baked into our ideas and our dreams and even our near-death experiences. And you can see some of that stuff in the links that I've dropped down below. There's a particular study, which we'll get to later on in the article here, but regarding not just shadow people, but this idea of deathbed visions, visitors and vistas. And we've talked about it, different places on a deathbed experience, near-death experience, this type of thing, that people tend to encounter entities, lost loved ones, these things we call psychopomps, a guide maybe to take you across. And we've talked recently about the, stay away from the light, go toward the light, Carol Ann, all that stuff, right, from the original Poltergeist. But it's weird. It's weird to think about this in terms of those entities and what they mean to us and how we feel about them. So not just our dream realm OBEs, but also our psyche itself. Now, think of your fears, whatever your fears are, whatever your fears mean, however they manifest. It seems as if there's something to it where we're terrified of something and it manifests as a monster or a monstrous entity to us. And it might even, let's say, kind of leak into our dreams a little bit, or maybe terrify us, and the corner, you see the shadow person out of the corner of your eye, which we've talked about recently as well. But the idea here of, let's say, not just myth, but of course we're going to do a little Dungeons and Dragons tonight, but role-playing games alike. So these monsters that we manifest are basically trials. They're human trials, very Jungian shadow self, the shadow work as it's known, that idea, right? But what if they're not just obstacles, but these confrontational forces that are designed to press us into the transformation intentionally? And think about it like this, like the different monsters, let's just pull one out of the air and say the succubus or the incubus, right? Or another one, the gray alien. Or another one, maybe Hat Man, okay, a shadow person that wears the hat. And they manifest in different ways, even in the dream realm. And I wonder if you could think of it this way, like a particular monster, let's say the gray alien, and think of it in terms of a dream interpretation guide. And we've all seen some of those where they say, well, if you see if you're flying, it means this. If you show up naked in your dreams, it means that. Whatever, right? They've kind of, is it science? I mean, I wouldn't call it science, and I wouldn't even say, I buy into different interpretations of dreams because it's also personal. But, and the experts out there that have spent years studying it, I don't discount that, but I also don't buy hook, line, and sinker that they know what the hell's going on in everybody else's dream space. That's also a little bit weird to me, but you get the idea. Let's say, for instance, you can define the gray alien in your dreams or in your waking moments of terror as some sort of manifestation of human fear, okay? Meaning, insecurity, or think the 7 deadly sins, something like this, right? Where you can kind of match maybe some of these entities up to an internal human conflict within us, okay? And so I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that there's a lot of wild ideas that come with this. So I'm calling it tonight Trial by Monster. Architecture of psychic tension. And what does it mean? As usual, we'll get into more of this as we go. But as usual, look, all the disclaimers apply. There's no truth to be found here. This is just ideas. This is just kind of kicking up some dust and thinking about things that may or may not be true in the realm we live in. And of course, getting weird, because that's what we do. Detach from reality a little bit and just think conceptually. And that's the point. So remember, no truth, just ideas. And that's what's on my mind tonight. What else do we got? Let me see. Okay, so yeah, okay, so the strange entities, again, sleep paralysis beings, we've talked about that in the past quite a lot, shadow people, the Hat Man, gray aliens. However these things manifest, I do wonder if there's a way to pin down exactly what they mean, sort of in the larger human dream zeitgeist, let's say, because I don't know. But it does seem to me that these recurring monsters might actually mean something. And maybe not only do they mean something, they're there placed within our psyche, within our dreams, within our waking moments, within a daydream, whatever it is, however you think of these entities, they're placed as a challenge of ourselves, from ourselves. And maybe these are the mechanisms of what happens within this conscious life as humans. I don't know. However, it does strike me that a lot of these things, these entities throughout the years are very similar. We've talked about that quite a lot. And what the hell does that mean? That's what's on my mind tonight. We're going to get to some more stuff. As usual, going to get weird and wild. If you're into it and want to read ahead, I do recommend the write-up, as I said, Trial by Monster, Architecture of Psychic Tension. We'll get into psychic tension and the rest of that as well. But what does all this mean really becomes the question. I'll ask you some better questions in a second here. But we're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsor. In this case, it is Human Inspiration. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds in exactly 1 minute. And we got James already on the line. We'll talk to him momentarily. And we are taking your calls, by the way, at 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. But let's take a quick break. Be right back. More Troubled Minds in exactly 1 minute. Don't go anywhere.
In a world increasingly shaped by AI, human inspiration remains the beating heart of creativity. Alien Skin by Tremble, a hauntingly beautiful piano ballad, reminds us that while algorithms can mimic art, the raw, unfiltered emotions of human experience are irreplaceable.
So here I sit, locked in my room again.
Written and composed by Jesse Ian in collaboration with Todd Smith, this progressive masterpiece delves into the depths of internalized grief and the silent toll of artistic compromise. As AI reshapes our reality, Alien Skin stands as a testament to the timeless power of human emotion and the complex beauty that only true artists can evoke. Experience the haunting beauty of Alien Skin by Tremble and support human inspiration. Available now on iTunes.
Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Let us continue, shall we? All right. So what we're basically talking about here is this psychological pressure. I'm calling it the architecture of psychic tension. And in that case, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for a lot of different reasons. And, there's the basic human fear mechanisms, being assaulted or, somebody sneaking up on you, things like this, right? Like just the basics, being the prey in a predator-prey situation. And that goes in the animal kingdom and everywhere else, right? But in terms of us and ourselves and actually challenging what we know about growth and about sort of no longer being afraid of the shadows in the closet or the monsters under the bed, it seems as if we exchange those childhood ideas instead for this psychic tension, for the idea that the monsters out there are quite a bit more terrifying because we haven't confronted them or even seen them directly when they're very simple. Very specifically, one of my monsters, one of my demons, as you guys know, is public speaking. When I was very young, I was terrified. I could barely stammer out a sentence without wanting to cry. Honestly, it was that bad. And so, it comes from a lack of confidence. It comes from a lack of practice. It comes from so many things. Okay. And that was one of my monsters. And how would you actually clarify that or quantify that in terms of an entity? Was that a gray alien monster? Was that the Hat Man? Was it, you see what I'm saying? And I wonder, because those human things are very central to what we are as people, of course, but they're not, a fear of public speaking is not at all uncommon. And probably most people have it, I would think, to some degree. And would you guess, by the way, probably like greater than 50% of the population has that latent cooked in fear of, they're all going to laugh at me type of stuff. I don't know. Anyway, you get the idea. And so in terms of that, how would you look at that as the monster that we face, that we conquer, that's been cooked up by ourselves? Okay. Because it's something simple. It's something very basic. However, within the architecture of the human mind, it's not so basic because things are complicated. We have regrets. We have these spaces where, as you grow a little bit older, I'm just speaking from experience here personally, that you don't realize when you're young, you make these decisions, and these decisions sort of ripple throughout your life in different ways. And sometimes there's no turning back once you make a decision. So there's always this latent pressure of doing the right thing in the right moment, which is impossible. Nobody does it all right all the time. That's just silly. Too many potentialities to make all the right decisions. However, there's still that fear of screwing it up badly by doing something stupid. And so in that sense, that's one of those latent pressing fears. But what is that? How does that manifest? Is that, again, the Hat Man looking over your shoulder? Is that this cold, sterile feeling of the great alien trying to get a tissue sample or something? I mean, it's weird, right? But anyway, so the question becomes this. Have you ever faced a personal monster directly? In dreams, altered states, strange encounters that felt like it had a purpose beyond fear, beyond the fear mechanism of the monster itself. And that's what I wonder. How much of this do we create, and how much of it is so archetypal that we end up talking about the same monsters as if it's code, as if it's the runes of the ancient Norse, or just something that we all recognize, but we talk about it in such a way that it's to be decoded. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? I hope I'm making some sense here. But anyway, so are these experiences random, or are they part of a larger mechanism? Is this intentional? designed to maybe stress test our human psyche as part of this conversation and part of our fear cycles, because we all have it. Remember that show Fear Factor, and the eating the bugs and all the things, right? Remember all that stuff, and right, the rats and everything, the snakes, like whatever you can consider. They did that to kind of make people go, ooh, hell no. And there's some of that stuff is primordial, which is an interesting thing too. When you go back to, snakes crawling on you or bugs or whatever these things were, then suddenly in that case, the monsters are very real. They're just not quite monsters. They're, well, little creepy crawlies, right? But anyway, you get the idea. So basically, what do you think this is? Do you think it is a mechanism built into us where we sort of have that archetypal naming structure of monsters for these particular fears, or how would you say it? It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. This gets weird, of course. We're gonna get totally weird. We're talking D&D tonight a little bit. We're talking monsters. We're talking this psychic tension and the architecture of the human mind. What do you know about it? And why is it always monsters? Even into adulthood, there's still sort of this concept of these monsters that are recurring continually over and over and over again. Why? Love to hear what you think about it. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. Speaking of which, let's go to James. James Salcedo. What's going on, my man? Thanks for jumping in here early. How are you, sir? And go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm okay. It's kind of ironic in a way that this topic, and you mentioned earlier being afraid of sort of doing something not so smart or not so bright, and when you're just sort of panicked or whatever, you're trying to get things done and they're not going a certain way. I was testing out my laptop tonight. I just got a new laptop from a couple of friends, and I wanted to see if I could use my headset with it, and I could not get it to work. And tried a few things, could not get it to work. Didn't realize until I was going to plug in the headset for tonight to be listening in here and then possibly calling into the show. I didn't notice the physical volume knob on the headset was all the way down. So there may not have been any tech issues at all.
Too many buttons. It's happened to all of us, James. It's happened to all of us.
Oh, and I'm fine now, but it's just so funny how, this kind of partially came up during the show too. I even restarted my regular computer tonight when it happened, because I was like, okay, now it's happening on this device. And that's what kind of got me thinking, wait, hang on. And so anyway, I didn't get to listen to the write-up because I was dealing with stuff and my own issues, ironically enough. But this is a topic is amazing because whether I do think there are, sort of images and ideas of our own creation and all that within our minds that then can show up outside of our minds and in the real world. I also do think there's this thing called co-creation where there is something else out there, and whatever it is, we don't know. But the way we see it is based in part on our own filters, our own thoughts, our own processes. And so I do wonder with all this, because there's been so many accounts of people that have seen odd things that are just terrifying. But then whatever they are, whether it's aliens or monsters or whatever, they may come toward the person and they may even look like they're going to attack, but then they don't. They just sort of just stay there, or they just approach and then basically try to scare you, and then they leave. And of course, the idea behind that for a long time, what I heard was that they were feeding on the energy of the fear. But also, I think it's an important question here. What if they are out there, whatever they all are, to test us? Because I've had a few negative experiences, and even though they weren't fun, negative experiences with other beings somehow, even though they weren't fun, they taught me a lot. And I'm a lot better now overall at recognizing how I feel about any kind of an odd experience with anything unexplained, or even just in life in general, sort of picking up how I'm feeling about situations and not letting the fear instantly just, take over and possibly cause me to make mistakes.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing once you've kind of conquered some of those things. Not to say that all fear can be conquered. I'm not so sure that's the case. So we're always going to have it kind of, as part of just being human. And, that fear of always making the wrong decision type stuff is it's always there. I think it's, how deeply you let it affect you is an important part of that. But you're right. Like once you start to recognize some of these things and kind of feel that creeping in, then maybe you're able to cut this off at the pass and maybe sort of remove some of the mysticism from these ideas, including the monsters themselves. But what about the monsters as these archetypal sort of 7 deadly sins type of thing? Meaning, this particular thing, fear of something manifests a particular monster in our minds. What do you think about that? You think it's closer or less close than hitting the mark there?
I think it's possible. I always think of I read a lot of, well, not a lot of, because there's so much, some of Jacques Vallée's first books, and he talked about how some alien encounters that people claim to have when they were in bed at night, when they would see them, even to the point of possible abduction encounters that happened at that time. Jacques Vallée didn't think it made sense because of the way there was. Basically, his idea was that the methods that these aliens or whatever they were used, and that the technology that they used on people seemed very primitive compared to what you would think an alien species would have if they came from another planet or another dimension or whatever. And so his idea is that that people were not really experiencing that alien encounter or abduction, but it was something else that was contacting people. And that's just the way that the people were perceiving it. And so I do wonder about that too. Is that all them? Is that them plus some other being? I don't know. So it's hard to say, but even if you want to discount the other being entirely, then maybe, yeah, I mean, just to encounter something that you can't explain in your own dreams or your own sleep or waking up or whatever, I could imagine that being very terrifying, and especially if it only happens one time. But then if it happens repeatedly, then that's also hard. But then that also gives you the chance possibly to adjust and to sort of fight back and dispel whatever it is that's going on when you have multiple encounters like that.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's also limited to some people too. It's kind of a little bit of the sleep paralysis thing, the succubus, the incubus, that whole idea. But of course, it leads into that alien abduction scenario, which, I mean, you've experienced some of that yourself. And I don't know, it's bizarre. I do wonder, well, first, I think that we have a tendency as humans to sort of whatever we're interested in seems to manifest, right? And it's that, the weirdness of consciousness that we're always talking about. But also, that is one of the obvious parts here. But still, even so, I think with a sleep paralysis situation or an encounter with an entity somehow, you don't really get to choose what that entity is. It just sort of manifests. And I do wonder if there's sort of a psychic architecture in place for that exact mechanism, which is exactly what we're talking about tonight. As you know, got about 30 seconds left if you got anything to add.
Well, I just wonder if that can go up to societal levels where entire thought forms are created by these general fears, these general ideas, and they go around, move around from person to person because of whatever is going on in a society at any given time.
Well said. And pro on the timing. And James, always a pleasure, brother. You're welcome to sit and stay there, as you know. To give him a follow. If you guys haven't yet, you're hurting my feelings. SalcedoParanormal.com, just like it sounds. SALSIDO space paranormal. Actually, no space. Just SalcedoParanormal.com or troubledminds.org/friends. And it says follow James here. Please do that. Go check out his books. Go check out his podcast. Go check out all the great things he's doing. And appreciate you sitting in. We're talking Trial by Monster tonight. Architecture of psychic tension. Now, as usual, there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I want to hear what you think. Do you think there is sort of these archetypal entities that match directly to a particular fear? The fear of falling, the fear of arachnophobia, things like this. And how do they manifest in terms of a cultural response in the temporal space? Love to hear what you think. 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More after the break.
In the shadows they lurk and lie, chilling whispers touch my mind. Oh yes, trading secrets with 1,000 eyes, like whispers blowing through the trees. Guardians of the thoughts we hide, with haunting dreams that never cease. The monsters dance in the corners dark, holding keys to lock my heart. They steal my peace, they can't be tamed. Psychic monsters play their game, guarding gates with cries of dread, trapped inside the webs I'm wed. Echoed laughter like a ghost, it's near. They watch me tread upon the slate. Shrouded figures made of fears, their silent screams resound like fate. Labyrinth puzzles in my psyche's maze, I fight against this endless haze. Searching for the light that breaks the night, these monsters can't win this fight. They steal my peace, they can't be tamed. Psychic monsters play that game, guarding gates, cries of dread, trapped inside the webs I'm wed. But I will rise beneath their grip, shattered chains let my mind slip, breaking free from their dark throne. A battle fought, I stand alone. They steal my peace, they can't be tamed. Psychic monsters play their game, guarding gates with cries of dread, trapped inside the webs I'm wed.
Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, what if the monsters we fear are not intrusions, but assignments? Personalized trials scripted by something ancient, internal, or watching. Could the Shadow Man, the gray alien, or the final boss at Death's Edge be part of a psychic architecture meant to forge us through terror itself? There's a lot there, of course, and as usual, these conversations range far and wide and all the rest of it. But what is your take on it? How come we have this sort of latent fear of these entities, and they even sort of regurgitate, meaning that the same entity, the gray alien, for instance, the abduction experience, it's not something that's an isolated thing. It's something that's really taken the zeitgeist by storm in recent years, going back to the 80s. If you guys remember, we did a Google Ngrams, I believe, the first abduction, something like hit the zeitgeist in like 1984 or 85, shortly after, about 5-6 years after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the Spielberg flick. So I do wonder if movies and pop culture kind of infuse these ideas and create these new monsters. But then also, what do they mean? Because it feels as if we could crack this code of what these things actually mean when they manifest in a sleep paralysis type of experience, that maybe this is something that is curable. You know what I'm saying? Something where you could kind of distill it down to what this monster might actually mean specifically and take direct logical steps to sort of fix the problem. And whereas these monsters fade away, I don't really know. It's just an idea here and kind of wondering what this really means and why we're still talking about monsters in 2025 as a society. It's not just me. I like to talk about them, of course, because I think it's highly fascinating. However, what's going on with this? And is it basically just kind of pumped in by this infusion of the zeitgeist from pop culture and all the rest, or is it something else entirely? I don't know. I got some stuff to get to as usual. If you guys want to jump in here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what this is. Do you think it's possible we can crack this code and maybe say, oh, okay, I see. Mike, you're having dreams about a particular alien abduction experience of the gray alien. Well, that means exactly this. Or do you think that maybe dreams and these spaces are so ambiguous that that level of sort of correction is impossible in this day and age? I don't really know. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts if you want to jump in here. Anything you got, James, or else I got tons of stuff to get to.
Yeah, I do think I'm sure a lot of people have heard this. People have been thinking about monsters, or at least unknown beings. I think probably since people were around, just all the whole time. Maybe they didn't always have labels for them, names for them, and I imagine in some cases, maybe so much now, maybe still, I don't know. Some of those monsters are more or less just animals that people encountered out in nature, years ago, that they had to deal with a lot more than we do now in a lot of cases. But yeah, I think my feeling is that we have to figure this out. We have to really go over every bit of what we were feeling, what we were thinking. Just really go over our internal record of our own everything, really, within our mind that was going on in any one of these experiences after it happened. Just sort of sit there and go back and rewind it. And I wonder if that could lead to there being less of these things happening. I think if it is all within sort of our own minds, whether it's individuals or society, maybe that could work. But also, I as usual, I have no idea. But happy to sit in as usual as well.
And glad to have you. Always a pleasure. And fire take as usual. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to read a little bit. This is from Perplexity. And Perplexity is very good. Like I said, it's 2025. If you're still using Google, you were doing it way wrong. But this is amazing. So I just fed in that same question that I read to you as we came back at the bottom of the hour there to start the segment when the music was still playing. I just fed that question into this thing, and it literally peeled out 100 sources. Listen to this. This is part of it. This is kind of on the top part. Contemporary research reveals striking consistency in how fear-inducing entities appear across cultures and experiences. Shadow people, described as dark humanoid figures that appear in peripheral vision, manifest most commonly during states of exhaustion, stress, or psychological transition. Patterns, you see. Rather than random hallucinations, these encounters follow predictable patterns that suggest intentional design, which is my point tonight. The gray alien archetype similarly appears with remarkable consistency. Large-eyed, diminutive beings conducting examinations that invariably focus on consciousness, memory, and genetic material. Multiple researchers note these encounters often occur at pivotal life moments, suggesting a systematic rather than random approach. And I could see, if you've got a procedure, like an operation or, something like that coming up, I can see how maybe that manifestation of a gray alien and that abduction experience might be labeled as pretty much exactly that, where you just have this terror of something going wrong. Nobody likes being cut open or and put under and their consciousness going dark and then waking back up, and just all the mess that goes along with it. There's the stress of the hospital bills and the everything. I mean, there's just so much, even for a simple procedure, that certainly you could kind of qualify or quantify that entity as maybe part of that deep psychological fear of literally having no agency in a moment like that, because there's nothing you can do. Either it goes well or it doesn't. And, cross your fingers, most of the time it goes well. And we do know this is true in the modern time. There are bad examples of it, but for the most part, I mean, things happen without incident. But still, there's that fear, even on like a tiny procedure. It's in the back of our minds that something may go horrifically awry, and that to me kind of screams that alien abduction experience, as if that idea is, well, how bad can it get? And so our minds sort of draw into the zeitgeist this idea of being experimented on by these non-human entities, these creatures from Alpha Centauri or wherever, someplace in the void that's indescribable. And so that right there really strikes at the heart of this primordial terror we're talking about. But also, that in particular, like I said, you could probably trace back to that kind of fear, that level of, going under the knife. I'm going to get an operation. I'm going to, whatever, going to, get my wisdom teeth taken out, whatever those things look like. And so I wonder, right, if you can do that again, conceptually, I don't know if I'm correct here, but if you can conceptually say the alien abduction experience is that level, at least let's say a large swath of it is that level of an anxiety of an operation or some sort of medical thing, then that makes a ton of sense. Okay. Except maybe it doesn't. It just depends, as usual, right? And all those things are contextual. And I'm not saying every situation is the same because that would be ridiculous. But anyway, so that's one of the ways to look at this from my perspective. And that's the point of this, is if you could boil down something like that. And I know that's what the dream interpreters do with the, if you see a butterfly in your dream, it means this. If you see white fluffy clouds, it means that. Maybe, right? Maybe. As usual, there's no definite answers when we're talking about dream states and altered states of reality, and of course these other realms per se. But anyway, so multiple researchers note that these encounters often occur at pivotal life moments, suggesting a systematic rather than random approach. I just read that. So deathbed visions. Now here's the weird part. This is how this gets weird. Deathbed visions represent perhaps the most sophisticated example of this phenomenon. Research spanning decades shows that 50 to 88% of dying individuals, think about that, 50 to 88%, that's a massive number, report encounters with deceased relatives, spiritual beings, or guide figures who appear to ease the transition from life to death, which we've talked about. That's the psychopomp. That's Car on the Boatman. That's the ancestral spirit that comes and tries to tell you to go into the light or to not, or whatever, right? Some loving entity that's there to help that transition, whatever that looks like. But think about that number, 50 to 88%, research spanning decades. That's massive. And those links, I'll share this perplexity afterward in the Discord. And you can track all this down. I'm not just making up numbers and throwing them out there. They're sourced, okay? But anyway, so these entities consistently provide comfort, guidance, and preparation for what lies beyond. And this is a near-death experience, though, or deathbed, right, similar, suggesting a deliberate intervention rather than mere neurological misfiring, which is why this kind of strikes me as being so fascinating, because we have lots of things happening in these patterns, in these cycles. And of course, when we're talking monsters, aliens, ghosts, whatever you want to name them, it seems as if these things, we could figure out what this stuff actually is. So I'm going to get into the neuroscience of this transformative terror in a sec from this perplexity, because it's very good. But James, anything to add to that? And we'll go right back to the madness.
Well, there's just so many reports I've heard of and read of over the years about people that were taking care of loved ones as they were getting near the end of their life, and of just all kinds of anomalous events happening around these people as they're getting ready to pass. And not just sort of them reporting seeing things, but other people around them seeing apparitions of people that have passed, hearing sounds, just all these things. So it doesn't surprise me in a way that there would be that large of a number, even if we want to consider the possibility that whatever is happening is somehow generated by our own minds. I'm thinking right now of people that can affect electronics if they're in a highly emotional state, if they're going through something. And that's something I've heard about before, where that can be that being in any kind of a highly emotional state, highly stressed state, can sometimes cause anomalous events to happen around people.
Yeah, and that goes back to that, was it Thomas Bearden in that MUFON symposium? We talked about this a couple of times in the past, that sort of pop-out tolpoid is part of this, the thought form that's manifested as a physical entity, as something visible to the people around them, that is based on fear and trauma and these ideas. And his theory was, if you guys didn't follow that show, this is probably a year and a half ago at this point, but when we talked about it, it was about the Cold War fears of a nuclear doom sort of always hanging over your head, and that manifestation of a societal fear manifesting as these UFOs or, spirits or lights in the sky, as not actual physical things, but sort of psychic tolpoids, pop-out tolpoids as part of that discussion, which is wild to consider, because imagine the stress of anything else. We talk about battlefields. We talk about, natural disasters. Like all manner of just ridiculous things that cause an unbelievable amount of trauma when you think the end might be nigh. And so I do wonder, or let's say a latent stress of that in terms of, a nuclear possibility, which, most of us have lived under for a lot of our lives anyway. But I don't think about it. I mean, maybe I do and don't realize I do. But I mean, I don't know. It's a weird part of this. It's a weird part of this discussion. Anything on that, James? And I'll go straight back into the thing.
Yeah, and these events that happen around the time of people thinking they're going to pass or people passing, these things sometimes they'll keep going. There will be a phenomenon after the person has passed for days, even possibly longer at times. So these are things that, even if you want to say they're generated by people themselves, there's enough energy somehow in these processes that these things can go on for who knows how long afterward. And we see that with places like Gettysburg and just places with a lot of history of a lot of people dying in a location, unfortunately, where they become known as areas of apparent hotspots for paranormal activity or UFO activity, all these things together.
Yeah, and it's funny how they all sort of merge into that idea for sure. Okay, back to this. So recent I have to stretch before I say this word. Let me stretch real quick. Okay, there's a big word coming up. Recent neuroscientific findings support the hypothesis that fear-based encounters serve specific consciousness expanding functions. When the left temporoparietal junction, I think I did it, is stimulated, researchers can artificially create the sensation of a shadow person presence. This brain region is crucial for self-recognition and boundary perception, precisely the faculties that transformative experiences seek to dissolve and reconstruct. In this case, fear serves as what psychologists term an exposure therapy, mechanism that builds resilience through controlled confrontation with anxiety-provoking stimuli, which, as usual, we've talked about this in the past quite a lot. The best way to kind of handle your demons is to face them directly, whatever that looks like, whatever that means, and give it hell and give it your damnedest. And like I said, look, I'm here because of it. And it seems silly to suggest that a demon is something as simple as a fear of public speaking or a fear of making a mistake in front of an audience. Or, I mean, it is a human latent fear, and it's something probably we all have had in our lifetime to some degree. I don't know. Do you know anybody who ever just jumped right up on the stage and started singing and dancing? I guess maybe they exist, but it's probably the opposite. It's probably more like what I'm describing. But even so, something like that could be crippling for your life, for you and how you manage not just, let's say, your professional life when that starts to take over, and you got to pay the bills and all those things, but also your personal life when it comes to just talking to people without that level of anxiety because you say the wrong thing in a social setting and, you're the pariah, you get laughed out of the room and, you never show your face in public again. And these things happen. And so it's usually fear-based because, of course, we blow these things out of proportion that, oh, Mike, you said the wrong thing. Oh, the horror, right? The end of the world. No, because everybody says the wrong thing all the time. It happens all the damn time. It's sort of how we manage it, how we deal with it in terms of the pressure that's on us and facing that monster itself. And back to this, studies demonstrate that individuals who regularly face their fears develop enhanced psychological flexibility, improved coping strategies, and increased meaning-making capacity. The systematic appearance of fear-inducing entities during vulnerable states perfectly mimics this therapeutic framework. So you see, if you do, it kind of gives you a superpower. If you directly go after whatever is your boogeyman directly, it opens up all these other places in your brain to sort of allow you to become whatever you want to become. Does that surprise anybody? It doesn't surprise me a single bit. But as usual, it feels as if there's this architecture of this psychic tension I'm describing as part of that, almost as if this is intentional. Like we create these monsters for that exact reason, because it would be far too easy to just say, this is the problem. This is what I need to do. And boom, suddenly you're a better human being for it. You get it? It's almost as if we're obfuscating the problem indirectly by creating a monster to take the place, to be the placeholder for what our actual monster is, which is just some phobia or what have you. Does that make sense? Makes a little bit of sense to me, like I said. And it's one of the things that I've challenged myself to do, to be here, to do this, to, like I said, it may seem silly. And those of you that call into the show, sometimes, when you first started calling, it's a little bit daunting because, you don't know how it's going to happen. People are listening. It's live. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want me to make you look like a dummy or whatever, right? Like there's an anxiety there, but eventually you get over it. But as usual, like I said, some of this stuff is fantastic when it comes to actually kind of tackling what that monster is. And if you can put a name to the monster, which is part of the write-up too, it talks a little bit about once you're able to name it and recognize what these entities are, and this is my point in talking about sort of the trial by monster and the psychic tension, is if you could say, as for instance, like I described earlier, that gray alien is most times, not all times, most times a fear of a coming surgery. Right? And suddenly, if you can map these things out and make some sense of it, then suddenly we've demystified our fear mechanism and our fear architecture, and we're able to kind of hit it head on. Anything on that, James? I got more from this, of course.
Yeah, it makes me think of some dreams I've had over the years. More so, I would say in my teens, maybe early 20s, where I had dreams of places that had just unrealistic floors and steps and sudden drop-offs and just weird things like that. And in those dreams, there was never anyone around, but I felt like I was being watched in some cases. And I'm legally blind. I was born legally blind, and I have no depth perception. But when I had a couple of those dreams, I started realizing, well, this is a dream, and I don't have to walk around this place if I don't want to. And eventually those dreams they just stopped, because I think that was a way for myself, and now that I'm thinking about it, my own mind saying, hey, there's going to be weird things you're going to encounter when you're walking around wherever that won't make sense and that may be dangerous or may just seem dangerous. But you will be able to get through whatever is going on. And even if you just have to go around, I think that is definitely a part of ourselves. And I think that was what was happening with me. It was my own mind sort of imagining possibilities of situations that I could come across where I can't see what's going on the ground, but still getting through those situations and knowing when to sort of stop or back off and not take a certain way instead.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it is, in that case, it is the true void, because you're not able to see in certain cases entirely. You're literally stepping into dangerous situations, and without the experience necessary, as you get older, you get a little more experienced. You don't do things like fall down in the parking lot, et cetera, so on. But you kind of gain that armor against that fear because you've experienced it. And in that case, it's a physical directness, but it's also that fear of the void. Because what if, right? Imagine anybody out there as you're just walking down the street. What if you lose your vision, even temporarily? So let's say everything goes blurry for a minute, and you're walking down the street. Like you're very, very vulnerable. And as part of that, it is that fear of, what's out there? Because if you can't see it, you don't really know, do you? So yeah, a lot of ways to look at this as usual. And to me, like I said, it's more sort of mapping that idea of a dream interpretation aspect of this, and kind of looking at it in terms of the larger zeitgeist, the temporal zeitgeist, as we call it, because some of these entities, again, have been recurring emblems or symbols or actual entities forever, the world over. And as usual, that type of thing to me makes me wonder what the hell's going on. And it seems as if it is a trick of the mind. And in that case, like I always say, I'm not saying that an alien abduction experience is fake. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I haven't had one. I can't say one way or the other whether the stuff is happening or not. And I'm not going to try, but I am going to suggest that if this continues, and it is sort of a mental space within us, that I do wonder if there's a mechanism causing these sorts of things to happen. And I don't know what that means or what that looks like. That's why I'm calling this as I do, the weird names I call these things, the architecture of this psychic tension. What does it mean? And how long, does this go on before we kind of shake down the ideas that have been haunting us forever? Because sometimes, like I said, they're simple. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes these are even, let's say, in the epigenetic sense, sometimes these are family curses that have gone on for literally generations that you've adopted unknowingly, and now they manifest in sort of later years in your life as patterns. As usual, right? Patterns, because that's what people do. We get locked into these patterns and we don't even recognize them, but they're there. And so I wonder, these patterns, as maybe these monsters in particular, makes a ton of sense to me. But however, once again, I'm not the arbiter of anybody's truth. Like I say, barely my own. So what does it mean? And what do you think the Hat Man would represent? If we could say, let's say the alien abduction experience, the gray alien from Zeta Reticulans. Got the Wikipedia up here. The Roswell Gray is simply the gray aliens. What about those? If we can say, again, and do you agree with my premise that maybe it's a latent fear of surgery that's sort of leaked into the zeitgeist and made us go, yeah, that's kind of terrifying if something goes bad on the surgery table there. But what would the Hat Man be? What would be sort of these newly emerging Zozo, as we've said? Who is the other one? Slenderman. Some of these new versions of these old entities. What do they represent? And how would you define the Hat Man? And again, maybe this is an impossible task, but does it make any sense to you? And do you think you could say, well, maybe the Hat Man is this for this reason? I don't know. That's where my mind's at. I got some other weird stuff to get to, but as you know me, I can't dump all the best, weirdest stuff right up front because this is a call-in show and I want to hear what you guys think instead. But I will get to some super weird stuff. I promise you that. Read the write-up if you want to get ahead of me because it's all in there. And yeah, anything on that, James? Got a minute left and we'll take a break.
Just two things. I find it plausible with the alien thing being related to surgery because if you think about that, when people when you're going into a place where you're going to have surgery done, what are the people there wearing? They're usually wearing masks over their lower part of their face, to where there is no visible nose or mouth. And if you think of this the description of grays, so often they have barely any nose or mouth. Also, I think the shadow figure could also, and the variations of it, could just be a fear of possibly strangers or strange situations. I wonder if that's an explanation for that. Again, I have no idea.
Yeah, same. No idea, which is why we need to talk about this, at least, well, in a fun conceptual way here, because as usual, I don't expect to get to the bottom of anything. It's more kind of looking at some ideas a little bit differently and wondering why these patterns seem to persist, not just, let's say, as individuals, but as the society we live in, whether that's the West or the East or anywhere else. Seems like a lot of repeating patterns. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. If you want to be part of the conversation, you know what to do. Give us a call at 702-957-1037. That's 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. And I don't know. We're going to get weird, of course, because that's what we do. But these monster archetypes sure seem to be something. And of course, not just in terms of what we deal with today, the modern zeitgeist, but again, the ancient zeitgeist seems to echo a lot of this back at us. Why? One more time, 702-957-1037. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Don't go anywhere. More on the way. We got more from James, Derek the Night Stalker, and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight's, what do you know? What if the monsters we fear are not intrusions, but assignments? Personalized trials scripted by something ancient, internal, or watching. Could the Shadow Man, the Gray Alien, or the final boss at Death's Edge be part of a psychic architecture meant to forge us through terror? And if so, who or what is testing us and why? And that becomes a question. As usual, we look at things quite a bit differently as part of these conversations for exactly that reason. I realize this isn't entirely novel, but it is something that we haven't talked a ton about in terms of our demons, maybe us being able to name them. And again, the power of the name, Rumpelstiltskin, comes to mind as part of these, the imp folk of old, the fey folk, where if you can recognize what they are and who they are by naming them, you remove the chaos that they can hand to you as part of the relationship, that being the demon. So I don't know, a lot of ways to look at it per usual, but if we could name these entities, could we run them off like Rumpelstiltskin entirely? Anything on that, James? We'll go to Derek the Night Stalker.
Yeah, this just makes me think of one of my own, I guess you could call it metaphorical demons, is imposter syndrome. I dealt with that over the years on and off. Every so often it just comes up. And I've gotten better at dealing with it now than I was maybe even if just a few years ago overall. So maybe there could be something to that, just knowing what it is, or even just having a general idea of what it is that's bothering you. That could be an important thing.
Yeah, putting a name to that demon, that metaphorical demon. Love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. How weird does it get? And of course, as you know, nonlinear, open-ended is the way this conversation goes. So love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. Just like this. Go to Derek in Massachusetts.
What's going on, Brutus?
What's going on, my man? Welcome to The Joint. How are you? Thanks for being patient with us tonight. And go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, not too bad. So I'm sweating in my car right now. The hot and humid one. Not too bad. I got a few ideas here. Want to just prompt me again real quick, just so I can get my bearings. But wild stuff. Great stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like I said, it's not incredibly novel here, but basically, can we?
No, I like it.
Is this trial by monster an architect of this psychic tension that we always carry with us, but then is manifesting as a particular entity? And can those entities be named? Meaning that, again, sort of as my example, because it's probably the most obvious example, the gray alien entity that kind of appears to us in these, maybe a dream state, or maybe that, what is it? The pressure on your chest. That's what's it called?
Succubus, incubus.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Sleep paralysis thing.
Yeah, the sleep paralysis. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, the night hag. Yeah. All those things. So, depending on, again, so it's not just, let's say in medieval Europe or whatever, you wouldn't have a gray alien probably, but now in 2025 we do, as part of that sleep paralysis aspect. Why is it? And are you able to name these entities as fear, loathing, this, that, or the other thing, a fear of a surgery, for instance? I'm not really sure. Take it wherever you like.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So first, I mean, it could be, we talked about it a ton, but just the human pattern recognition ability, kind of just how we take in information and kind of use it to navigate our life. We take information and kind of storytize it, turn everything into stories and kind of everything into characters. So there's a chance that these primal fears and these kind of obstacles in life, we take in the information, absorb it, and then our mind gives it to us as a monster. And that probably could be a relic from like the early days of humanity, when like the whole bicameral mind thing, or we couldn't separate, like the peekaboo, how it works with a baby. Like they make you disappear. They can't separate. They can't tell what you're doing with your hands. They can't separate your hands from your face, the background from the foreground and stuff. So it's silly to them. In the same way, like if we see something weird, some kind of thing we don't recognize, it all kind of blends in and turns into a monster. We might like perceive it as a monster. But also it could be a remnant of that, or our fears kind of doing that to us, or kind of maybe it's primal forces, like invisible forces, like maybe fear is put on you. Maybe like envy is put on you. Sorry, you can hear me right?
Yep, you're good, loud and clear.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, like maybe these things like kind of little mini demons, or little like things that are kind of latching onto you. Or there's a comic series called like Surgeon Supreme, where so the Doctor Strange was originally a doctor, like a surgeon, and then he lost his hands, and in order to get his hands back, he learned magic. And the story is like, what if he went back to being a surgeon when he was still Sorcerer Supreme? And he goes into the hospital and he sees all the patients in the waiting room, and what everyone else sees is just people who are sick and people who are dealing with ailments. But what he sees, like in the image, is like everybody's in black and white. It goes from like a regular color image, and then the same image but black and white. But now all the like there's monsters, and there's like little amoeba things that are kind of latching on, these parasites, these things that are feeding on somebody. So maybe envy is not just, I mean, it's probably something you have to deal with, but maybe it's also the little envy demon. It's like a leech that's like on your ankle and you can't get it off. And maybe recognizing it, it's like, oh wow, there's a leech in my ankle. Let me get some salt. Let me get the thing off. And that's kind of dealing with that way. What do you think? Before I get to the juicier stuff.
Yeah, no, I love the old Sorcerer Supreme Strange. I was reading a little bit about that recently too. And yeah, that would make some sense, right? If you were a wizard, had those types of powers, could see those things, maybe you would recognize that. And imagine sort of like a virus, like the virus throughout your body. It's, affecting you in different ways. You can't see it per se, but maybe you could see a change in the aura of an entity, an individual, and recognize what that meant as part of this larger context of, maybe, just maybe, this particular thing, like again, the 7 deadly sins, maybe one of those demonic entities of old. Yeah, exactly.
But then also for like the trial aspect of it, like the checkpoint of it, or the final boss you said a minute ago, that's the first thing that jumped into my head was a video game, and like the boss is at the end of a video game. So obviously there's we're living in a simulation. There's this kind of our challenges. I mean, our like growth, our evolution as a person is then met with obstacles on purpose because we're living in this game, and that's kind of the Maya dream state, illusory matrix style aspect of life, is that in order to accomplish something, we have to go through a trial in order to get to the thing. So in a video game, you have to get past the guardian of the threshold, the final boss, the weird chipmunk thing in the giant that's hoarding all the bananas if you're Donkey Kong, in order to get to the next level of the thing. And so it could be just popping up because we're in a simulation, and that's just how life works. Or also like it could be so that we progress. So if you say, I'm not a big video gamer, so I'm not great with the references, but if you beat a game and then it's like really strenuous and hard, you put a lot of hours into it, and then if you go back to the first level and try again, you can like crush it. You can so fast because you have all these skills that you acquired the first time around. It becomes much easier. So it's like the skills you acquire, and it keeps this like toughness as it's going along, but it's teaching you how to beat the game at the next level. So in the same way with the monsters within each level, is that like if you're in Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast or something like that, and you learn like a new jump skill in order to like at some task or some obstacle during the level, you like encounter some weird new type of villain that you have to figure out how to beat, and then come to find out a few hours later at the end of that level, it's a giant version of that, and you needed to learn how to beat the smaller version first in order to take out the bigger version. So it's like these are all skills. It's like the polishing of the diamond, or it's like in order to graduate to the next class, you have to take the final exam, and these like the monsters are final exams that if we can pass it, if we can accomplish it, if we can slay the dragon, then we can save the princess, graduate the class, make it to the next level of our life, or yada yada.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of consciousness too, like and the near-death experience, which is wild. Like I said, the studies there, I'll have it linked in the chat after we finish here. But 50 to 88% of near-death experiencers, deathbed folks, suggest that there's an entity there, almost as if like, and that's where the invocation of the term final boss came from, like maybe not a test per se, but almost like we've been dealing with entities our entire lives in one way or another, whether it's as simply as humans, but also these terrors, the night terrors, sometimes nightmares, all these things. And then also on top of that, we're talking 50 to 88% suggest there's an entity there waiting at the end, kind of like that boss fight. It's a wild thing to consider, but it's a very stark parallel, I think.
Yeah, freaky. It's like it's kind of like a characterization or like a physical manifestation of the wing of like our soul, or the pearly gates type of stuff. But instead, it's like you have this boss. Like, did you ever see the movie Hot Rod from like 2005 to 6 range with Andy Samberg, like the SNL movie, where he's like wants to be like a Evil Knievel character?
I never saw it. I remember the advertising, the commercials for it. I never saw it though.
Yeah. It's very underrated at the time, but it's like a comedy classic that absolutely hilarious. But it's like a real tongue in cheek. But in it, he's like he's like a man child, and he's trying to graduate to like kind of the next level in his life. And during the course of the movie, he keeps trying to fight his stepdad. Like him and his stepdad's relationship is based around like them wrestling each other. He's like, one day I'll finally beat you and I'll become a man. He's like, and his stepdad's like, ha, yeah, right. And he gets a big kick out of it. And then finally spoiler alert for the movie, he's trying to he does the big jump, or he does whatever he's supposed to be doing, and then kind of flips into and at the same time, so that propels him into being able to beat his dad, which then he's a man now, and he grows a mustache and all kind of funny, silly stuff. But there's bullies. You have to figure out how to deal with the school bully in order to deal with a bad teacher, to deal with a bad boss, to deal with a bad person in life, or et cetera, that like these forged in fire in order to make a sword. You have to hammer, you have to smack the sword into like over and over and over and over again until it's sharp enough to slay the beast. Maybe that's what we are in life in general. But then yeah, like Jung, you mentioned Jung, and he says that like the outer world is a complete reflection of the inner world. So everything, like literally everything that you see, is something. It's like just a rendering of some of the internal processes, and that's like the ancients called that as above, so below. Like the sky is mirrored to the ground, which is mirrored to the inside, which is mirrored to the outside. Yeah, like so if you know the patterns of the movements of the sky, you know the movements of the earth, you know the movements inside. It's all reflective of each other. It's all fractal. But also, Jung says that the things that annoy you about other people are things that annoy you about yourself, or things that annoy other people about you that you don't realize. So if like, I don't know, if I might get annoyed by somebody who I think talks too much or mumbles or like won't shut up or whatever, because maybe someone's listening to me right now. It's like, wow, he's really stuttering and mumbling and he won't shut up. You know, it's because I gotta recognize my monster, then deal with it. You know, so they pop up so we can recognize them, so then we can deal with them in our own. They're echoes of something. One more idea, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's real, man. Like, I'm the radio guy, the radio connoisseur. I'm listening to people all the time, and I loathe people that remind me of me. It's wild, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's just like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's like the reflection, that mirror of yourself, and you can notice all the terrible things that you do. I say too much still. I've been doing this for years. I've been ironed out a long time ago, and I still do it. And it drives me nuts when I hear it. Like when I hear myself back, I'm just like, oh, stop. Will you stop that, Mike? Like, come on now. You've been doing this for years now. This is ridiculous. And I know it's minimal and it's really not that big a deal because everybody does it. Even professionals have been doing it for 30 years. However, it drives me nuts because it's one of those things that when I hear somebody else do it, I loathe it. And because again, not because it's something that is worthy of loathing, it's something I see in myself that I hate. And so it's just so weird how and I use hate loosely, but you know what I mean, how that idea of somebody else doing what you do, and you should be instead drawn to them and maybe appreciative of a similar struggle, but instead you hate them, right? You're just like, you kind of get your blood boiling when you hear their voice or whatever. It's wild. And I got radio guys here that I listen to locally that do that to me because they remind me of myself. And and I'm not that bad. Yeah. I'm really not that bad. Come on. But you know what I mean. Great. You know what I mean. Well, thank you. I wasn't looking for compliments. I'm just saying.
No. I know what you mean exactly. I mean, like I always, this, like I always listen to my call afterwards, and I listen to it once, and then I never want to hear it again. It's because I need to put myself through what I put everyone else through, and all the ums and the likes and the whatever. It hits me like a dagger. It's brutal. But then also at the same time, I had a massive stutter in like when I was growing up, and like I was in speech classes as a kid and everything, and up until I like started calling into shows, I would not talk on the phone. I just did not like to talk on the phone. I was always like a storyteller and stuff. I'm talking with my hands. I'm waving my hands around right now and stuff. And I never had a problem with like distracting class and that kind of thing and speaking in public that way. But on the phone, if people can't see my mouth moving and me just like gesturing to see my words, I wouldn't talk on the phone. But then because my boss started listening to Clyde, and I wanted to like listen to that to talk to my boss about what Clyde was talking about, like what I used to call 101 stuff. I would get so frustrated at the things he was talking about. So I had to call in. So my first like year and 2 years was like real combative calls, but I had to figure out, I had to conquer that fear a little bit. Now fast forward like 8 years or whatever it is, I'm getting a little bit better, and I think I'm a better speaker, and I stutter less than I did, and I'm less afraid to talk on the phone. But it's still, and I heard a replay like a couple Fridays ago. I did have a show, a call from like 2021 or whatever, and I hated it, and I thought it was the worst thing ever. But at the time, I probably thought it was better than a few years ago. I don't know. These are always like, so our own self critiques is hopefully to make us better and stuff. Hopefully, it's to polish us, it's to make us just to shine us like a diamond. It's like we're putting pressure on the coal to turn it into a diamond type of deal. I just moved my phone so you can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Sorry. Okay, beautiful. But with the echoes, with the reflection type thing, it makes me think of Batman's rogues gallery. So, and all of Batman's villains are kind of aspects of him. And was this intentional? Probably, like in individualized cases, yes. Like obviously, what would be a good villain like in the 1940s? Oh, I'm just some guy in a tuxedo or whatever because he has his own little costume. Yada yada. That could be funny, but like a clown is not the opposite of a bat. Like a lot of these things don't really make sense as echoes of him. But when you look at it and examine it now, Batman's rogues gallery, his villains, his monsters that pop up in Gotham City are all echoes of him. So the Riddler is his like problem solving, his detective stuff, trying to like run amok. The Joker is ultimate chaos versus Batman's ultimate order. Like they both can see the whole picture, and Batman just sees a mess and he tries to make it make sense. He lost his parents very young. He sees the chaos in the world. He tries to order it. Joker is also 1,000 years ahead. They both can do anything with prep time, but Joker sees all the order and he's like, I don't want this. Like it's too structured. Give me chaos, and they're perfect, like dipoles of each other. Scarecrow uses fear as a weapon. Batman dresses up like a bat to use fear as a weapon. Penguin he's a cobblepot. He's familial wealth, like Bruce Wayne's wealth. And one is used his wealth to acquire power and influence, and then there's Bruce on the other side. And also like in other interpretations, he's like kind of the king of the underworld. So in Batman's working in the shadows in the underworld, he considers himself to be king of the underworld in some aspects. Two-Face, double identities, split personalities, like Batman and Bruce Wayne. Catwoman, dressing in spandex and jumping in rooftops and doing crazy stuff to get your rocks off. Man-Bat, obviously the bad person, so he like is constantly fighting echoes of himself. But then also within the canon, like in the 80s, 90s, whatever, when it started to like deconstruct superheroes, it started to become like in Batman, like the Alan Moore Batman and stuff, or Frank Miller Batman and stuff. They were like, you started this Batman when you like we only had muggers before you showed up, and as soon as you put on a mask and started fighting crime, then all of a sudden the Joker pops up. Then you get Two-Face. Then you get these masked wild psychopaths. You did this. They so under that paradigm, his echoes, his monsters are manifesting. He didn't become Batman to fight these monsters. He became Batman, and these monsters materialized and popped up for him. It's like the boss is all like, I don't know, like I find it to be interesting, And so it's like our monsters are echoes, different challenges. So your monster was like conquering public speaking, and then when you are rich and famous one day, you're gonna be looking back like, well, if I didn't have that monster, I wouldn't have done any of this, and it could have been who knows where, like in a cubicle somewhere. So
God forbid the cubicle. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's wild too to consider that as part of the mirror image of, so it's Batman's fault because he created the scary bat and the order and beating up the muggers. That's all they had. I love that, because then suddenly the underworld develops because of him. He put the idea into the bad guys' heads that, okay, wait, I could do that too for a lot of reasons. I have these skills. I could do that. I could also put on a mask and in chaos. And I wonder too. Let's say that in mass media and the political spectrum and, the binary polarization of everything in the last, 10, 12, 15 years, I wonder without that if we'd be here at all. I think we're sort of the Batman remedy to some of that chaos, even though it seems like we wouldn't be. We're here talking to each other. We're here listening to wild ideas by dark of night and agreeing and disagreeing and still being friends tomorrow. It's something that's kind of gone the way of the dodo in 2025. So I do wonder if that manifestation of, like you said, that the echo and the zeitgeist brought us here and sort of brought me out of my shell as part of it. I don't know. It's a weird thing to consider, huh?
Yeah, on multiple levels too, because there's the public speaking level with like the making a show, but then also there's the content. There's like the conspiracy communities and stuff, literally battling monsters, battling shadowy figures, like whether it's people who it's the deep state or it's like an Illuminati or whatever, like government hiding aliens or the aliens themselves or Bigfoot or whatever. There's a literal monster at the center of specifically these maybe Jewish style communities and stuff that are. And if they are not, I believe in them. I especially like talking about them, even if they're not real. I don't have my own experiences, but I'm open to the fact that none of them are real. And if none of them are real, then all they did was just bring us together, which is cool, kind of. And then like with the Batman thing, in one scene, I forget who wrote it. I think it was Alan or Frank Miller or Graham Morrison, but they're like, I think it was Graham Morrison. They're like, Robin and Batgirl and your family, Bat family, your friends, they make you weak. Like we're the villains, your rogues gallery. They're your real family. We make you strong. You need us. Like, and it kind of it does kind of like if you're a season of Buffy, like, she levels up every season, and if she fought the first season's big bad that you fight at the season finale of season 1 in season 7, she'd wipe the floor with them because she's so much stronger and stuff. But you need, like, without this pressure, you wouldn't. I don't know. It's like you watching The Bear? Have you seen the cooking show? That's probably the number 1 show on TV right now.
I haven't seen it.
The Bear. It's great. It's really great. But he has he's like a chef who's like working in his family restaurant and stuff, and he went away to like all the finest restaurants, and he's like it's cooking, but he's considered in this canon like the best chef ever. But he has this person who he used to work for who just tormented him and gave him ulcers and just essentially like ruined his life, gave him all these complexes. He doesn't know how to deal with people now, but turned him into the greatest chef possible. And he's his monster there. And then when he confronted him, the guy's like, he didn't apologize for it. I'm not sorry. I don't think about you at all. I don't care if you're crying or if I made you cry every single day. Like, look at you now. I just read that you're the number 1 chef in Chicago last week. Congratulations, and you're welcome. And walked away. And it's like,
whoa.
Yeah. So it's like,
but also he's kind of right. But he's kind of right.
But he's right.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally.
That's like the movie Whiplash with Miles Teller and J. Jonah Jameson. Like, where he's teaching the guy drums, and it's the same scenario. It's like this guy is abusive. But you look through history, and a lot of people are abused like that. Kind of like whether it's athletes who have crazy dads, or like, I don't know, like martial arts instructors, or I don't know. It seems to like be a commonality that kind of, or at least these people will take credit for it. Kind of the, I don't know. Like, you wouldn't have got here, and it might be true. You wouldn't have got here without the pressure. You wouldn't have been able to overcome it. You wouldn't if you didn't have the obstacle. I feel like I kind of wish there was another person who's out there calling himself the best grocer alive to challenge me. I've slayed them all at this point. It's been 10 years since anybody said they're better than me.
Got to get a little lazy, Derek.
Yeah, that's all I really got.
The Jackson 5 comes to mind. Like there's
exactly
the
perfect one.
Yeah. There's so much of that too, and it's I mean, look, without sort of being through that fire, born in fire, this type of thing, and Prometheus, and all the things that exist, and the phoenix from the ashes. The toil and trial is why we're here. It is very fundamental, because if we look, imagine being the same person at 15 as you are at 60.
Yeah,
that's tragic.
Yeah. And I just popped in my head right now, but just there's also the possibility that this entire thing is kind of like an engine. The entire planet or humanity itself is an engine, and this is how we interpret combustion and stuff. And it's like we talked about during the Is the Force Bad show, and maybe that both sides of the Force are kind of have their own reasoning, but they're both working for a greater thing, and it's locomotion. It's one side pushing the other side to get to a destination, and maybe like we're all moving technology, or we're trying to open the portal, all the kind of stuff we always talk about. Maybe there's a darker reason, but probably it's just that if we conquer our monsters, we level up in life. But out of time. Thank you, brother. Awesome show.
Well said. Appreciate the call. Always a pleasure. You are the best. You know him. You love him. Derek the Night Stalker. Give him a follow at troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down. It's alphabetical. It says Night Stalker. Follow Night Stalker here. And please go follow his YouTube channel. It's free. Go leave him a nice comment. Many of you have. Thank you for that. And we're talking about Trial by Monster, architecture of psychic tension. What does it mean to you? Be right back. More Troubled Minds coming up. More with James. We got Joe in Florida and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM, Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, what if the monsters we fear are not intrusions, but assignments? Personalized trials scripted by something ancient, internal, or watching, like the Watchers. Could the Shadow Man, the Gray Alien, or the final boss at Death's Edge be part of a psychic architecture meant to forge us through terror? And I do wonder, because of course, think about all the fears you did have. Think about all those fears now as maybe a fool's errand or childhood ridiculousness, or however you want to frame those things. Like I said, imagine being the same person at 15 as you are at 60. That's a terrifying thought to me, because I think our entire purpose of being here is, shout out Herschel, is to create things, is to grow, is to change, is to learn, and then be able to use our wisdom and our energy to share those experiences through creation. And if we're not doing that, what are we doing? That's what brings me here every night. That's why I'm here. That's what has really been the backbone of this show, is to challenge myself. And here we are again, against all odds, starting from nothing is possible. And making amazing friends the world over has been a blessing. And thanks for being part of it, each and every one of you. James, real quick, what you got before we go to Joe in Florida?
Yeah, just a quick call from Derek. I was listening to you talking about the full radio thing, and even just, I want to mention too, with Derek, I mean, he's gotten so much better over the last 5+ years that I've heard him on shows. So he's definitely has nothing to be worried about there. But yeah, and the Batman, that's a whole topic for a whole show, because all of his sort of people that he's gathered around him are also, I think, probably parts of himself too as well. So interesting conversation there.
Yeah, tons of stuff in play. And we're talking again about monsters. The basis of this is, could you take like the gray alien and the sleep paralysis experience and suggest that it means a very particular thing? Maybe not. But let's say to a high degree, 75, 80% or something. A fear of surgery, a coming surgery, a trauma of a past surgery. Who knows? Dare we suggest a past life where you had a surgery? Who knows? This type of stuff, I don't really know. Like I always say, this is above my pay grade. But what happens when you sort of splinter that out and go, well, what about the Hat Man? Well, what about these other entities that the succubus, the incubus? What about all these entities throughout history that have changed but also remained very similar? What does it mean? And as usual, what do we do about it now? Is there anything we can do about it? Really becomes the question. Love to hear your thoughts. I'll get weird as we go, because that's what we do. 702-957-1037 and click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. We'll put you on the show. It's as easy as that. So let's go to Joe in Florida. What's up, my man? You are on Troubled Minds. Just unmute. Welcome to the joint. Thanks for staying up late with us, and go right ahead.
Yeah, I didn't even say. It comes up on that Discord, and I click accept, but then it was muted at the bottom. I didn't notice that. Yeah, the Hat. When you mentioned Hat Man, you kind of shook me. Years and years ago, when I used to work in the crematory, I had a partner, and he was, big African American dude, cool guy, but he lived in Chicago, not the good area. That's why I say that. And we would talk about stuff, ghost stories and things. He would tell me stuff that he would see at the crematory at night. But he mentioned the Hat Man. And at that time, I felt pretty versed in a lot of the, conspiracy things and all these beliefs and ghosts and all of that, but I had not heard of the Hat Man. And he would tell me, he's like, man, he goes, when I was young, he goes, I would see a shadow, and the guy had a hat at the end of my bed. And I knew when I saw him that I had to get out of Chicago, because I would end up like some of my friends did, and that was basically dead. That's what he would tell me. And he went into the military, got out, came to Florida, and worked in the crematory, worked another job in security. But he had told me that after he had done all that, he never really saw the Hat Man again. So just one of those things that maybe it pushed him out. And like Derek says, great. That was a great call, Derek. Maybe that was his particular motivation, to just to get out of the area. Not to maybe change himself, but to get out of the area. And he did. He moved out, and he just said when he was growing up in Chicago, where he was at in that neighborhood, it was so bad that a lot of his friends didn't make it, But that was the feeling he got when he saw that shadow, or that Hat Man. So.
Yeah, very, very back to what we were talking about, sort of the toll point aspect of it, sort of the manifestation of a dire situation of, fear on a nightly basis of living in a terrible place like that. Imagine the worst place in Chicago and then sort of taking that to the worst place in a war zone somewhere. I would imagine it's probably similar stress-wise. And so those types of things may actually manifest as that sort of devil over your shoulder, kind of watching you, waiting, just waiting as time, biding time for whatever horrific thing might happen next. It's I don't know. I can't imagine it. I've been to some of those places in my life and didn't stay for very long because, get me the hell out of here, right?
So I guess, would we consider people that are into religion, or maybe to such a point of being cultists, would some of those gods of the Bible, or God of the Bible, maybe, would that be, does that cause tension on people? People that live the word or live that life, and sometimes they enforce it on other people. Like, I look at religion as kind of psychic tension. Going to, I've heard of some people that got touched and then they become like a priest or a nun. My mom has a friend that when they were young, maybe in early 20s, that her friend came out, like they would go party and then on Sundays they'd go to church, And she said one day her friend came out and you could tell she looked visibly different, and that something came, and whatever that was, she became a nun after that. Now she's not a nun and she's like close to 80. But she had also claimed to have some psychic powers. And that was kind of weird. Like, we were at a party one day, my buddy who, owned the house and everything, was having the party. He came up to me and he's like, your mom's friend just like grabbed my sister and just started ramming things off. And the sister was visibly upset, and it wasn't a parlor trick. But this was a woman that seemed to be maybe psychically open, and somehow had something happen to her that made her, or she chose to be a nun. And later on down the line, she's no longer a nun, but she still has this psychic ability. She's told me stuff, but, you could believe that or not because my mom talks to her, so maybe that's a guess, what's going on in the house. But at a random party, telling somebody, hey, we know you're going through this with your family. It's kind of weird, and I'm kind of getting off topic, but it
is weird.
Yeah,
it's also real quick on that is that it almost feels as if she had a traumatic experience. That party life, will catch up, and some bad things tend to happen here or there that you can't control, and maybe that latent trauma, I'm guessing, also opened up that psychic avenue for her, kind of made her recognize that there was a whole bunch of stuff that she'd been not paying attention to forever. Just a kind of theory crafting on, why people change like they do.
Well, I had something, I've said it before on the show, every time I've had, the last few times I had a death in the family, unexpected really on my wife's side. You try to be the rock, everybody's falling apart. Anyway, in the evenings when everybody was in bed, and I still do it at night, I go out back, but on more than one occasion, in a sense of distress, I would see a shooting star. And to me, that meant that they were okay. But James was saying it earlier, sometimes entities or sometimes the living still hang around after they've left their body. I firmly believe that some of them can, until they pass on or they feel settled, or maybe they're checking in on you because you're here alive and they're showing signs until maybe you kind of get through the grief and you move along. Grief manifested and you move along. For me, lately, I had something that I did that I shouldn't have done. And I was praying and going out and looking for signs, and I knew that I was abandoned and I was on my own for whatever it was that I did, which I did do. And it literally started feeling like there was something attached to me. And I lost about 25 pounds. This might be something I'll message you privately during the week, but something that I clearly did. I should not have done, but I did. And it was not good. And it lingered for months and months and months and months. And I started to lose weight. And I was in the locker room and people would notice it. The guys I play hockey with noticed everything. And it almost felt like it was supernatural, but it was also me putting my own mind in a box, and I knew that. But there were certain things I had to do to get rid of it, and I did, and the weight is back on. And this had gone on since the end of October, which was an awful month here with hurricanes and things, and just the darkness that came, and me being sick and me being in the hospital. And while it wasn't something that I named or it was something that I saw, it was something that I was definitely manifesting. You know,
yeah, it's like that,
did it make me a better? Does it make me a better person? I don't know. Has it changed me? Maybe. I could tell you that me being sick when I got off the boat with my diverticulitis and all of that, I started looking down the line, and I guess if you want to call my ghost anything, or my psychic tension anything, or my monster anything, if I had to name it, I'd say it was a midlife crisis. A monster of the midlife crisis. Looking down the barrel of what we're promised or what we're told, and saying, hey, I'm going to work till the day I die. That monster and demon has been nagging me since October.
You're not the only one there. I had my midlife crisis when I was like 30. it came early. It came early. It's like my dark night of the soul that I've talked about in the past. It's that sort of losing faith in myself and everything else around me. But I'm lucky enough to have come through that. And by the way, as usual, I think I can say personally that experience has hardened me for the future. For maybe when my true midlife crisis hits, I'm sure it's here. I mean, I'm of the age, but
sorry,
you're good. But going through that, a really difficult point in the past like that, as they say, the 7 years in the wilderness, shout out to Robert, is, I don't know. I think there's some magic that comes out of it, as I've been calling it recently, the armor of God. And and talk about that in terms of AI and sort of hardening yourself against, the human dopamine aspect of a friend that's not a friend is non-human intelligence. But anyway, I think there's a lot to trial and tribulation and sort of the better person that comes out of it. Like you said, am I a better person? I don't know. I mean, I can't quantify that, of course. Can you? Maybe. But I think over the next 5 years, will it make you a better person? I would say probably.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you leave it behind, you learn from it, and you move along. Another question that I got, maybe for the audience, but when we talk about these psychic things, I mean, we've all had people that we get into a room with, and they kind of give us a weird vibe. You start to wonder if they're carrying something with them that maybe our sixth sense, whatever it is, our gut tells us, and maybe it's picking up on that this particular living person just carries a little more negativity, or being negative is one thing, but maybe having a feeling of somebody that you're around that just makes you unsettled. Is that some kind of a monster that is not possessed them, but maybe around them? Maybe it's polluted their energy. I don't know.
Yeah, when you were talking about that too, that entity that was sort of on you, it reminded me of that hitchhiker effect that George Knapp has talked about, the Skinwalker Ranch bit. And so I'm not going to delve into that, but I do wonder if those attachments can happen in terms of this psychic tension, and even maybe an entity that finds you and recognizes you're in a space that's compromised, and maybe does kind of put extra pressure on you. I don't know. It's a weird way to look at it, huh? What do you think about the idea of that the gray alien being sort of a latent fear of surgery, or a past surgery, or maybe you have an intuition about you need surgery coming that you don't know of yet? You think there's something to those archetypes in terms of how we perceive them, and maybe that's part of this, or you think that's just way too direct for an abstract concept?
Well, I think it depends, because you have people that get abducted and they have a positive experience, or they say it's a positive experience, and you have people that get abducted and they're horrified, and then you have, I remember waking up from surgery on my knee, and I felt like I went to sleep in mid-sentence, and I woke up at the end of the sentence. It was very weird. But I also do remember when I was a kid, they had to knock me out with gas for dental work. And there was a power of a suggestion. I remember the nurse or whatever it was in there with the dentist saying, "Oh, you're going to feel like you're on clouds." And I'll be damned, I still remember it. I felt like I was in a painting. I felt like the skies were blue and I was floating on white clouds while they were yanking my teeth out, right? So, didn't make me think it was a gray alien or anything, but I don't sleep on my back because I do have a fear that something will happen. I've always had fears of, I've had plenty of sightings. The weirdest one I had was when me and my friend saw something. I thought it was a dream, and he got kidnapped in Lebanon in the 80s. I had told the story a long time ago for anybody. Anyway, it was probably when he was like 12 years old, and years later when he turned 18, he told his dad, "I'm out of here." And he came to visit me in Florida. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, you remember that we saw this thing out there? Was that just a dream?" And it was like he was finishing the sentence for me, which suggested there was a possibility for abduction. Because he remembered that years later. And I always thought it was kind of a dream. But when I said it, he was like, "No, that really happened." So I never got bothered to get hypnotized. I don't lose sleep over it, but maybe the reason why I sleep on my side and with a heavy blanket is because my dreams do tend to get animated, and they're usually destructive. So I'm usually fighting in my dreams. I'm fighting something. I'm punching something. I have to make myself wake up. So a heavy blanket keeps me from punching anybody else in the room.
which is the way to go. Don't punch anybody else in the room. As you were telling the tale of you feel like you're on clouds. And then it felt like you were, floating in clouds and all the rest of it during the procedure there. Imagine if she had said, "It'll feel like, you're being taken up in an alien ship and everything's going to be just fine."
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That power of suggestion. And so what I'm describing is that a zeitgeist exact example of that is that it's sort of in our minds. Even, the most normie of normies out there has heard of the alien abduction experience and probably like face palms and goes, "This is so dumb. Why is anybody talking about this?" Well, because people have experienced this. And I wonder if that full court press from the zeitgeist and, the players that be since, again, 1985, that Google engrams of alien abduction is now sort of becoming maybe as prevalent as the Cold War nuclear space of our mind and the stressor as part of it. Because, of course, it's fractal now. The stressors are not just as simple as they were in 1960. And no offense to our friends that were experiencing stressors in 1960, you know what I mean. Suddenly you have fractal stressors happening all the time, all over the place. I wonder, though, you think that if you had been told it'd feel like you're on an alien ship, everything's going to be just fine, that if you would have dreamt you were on an alien ship?
Probably. Well, and here's the thing. After watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind when I was a kid, kind of creeped me out. And who knows if that didn't open my mind to things that were previously closed. So, then you can kind of go back to make the argument that Hollywood puts those things out there, like we say, for propaganda to prepare society or to see what their reactions are. So I can tell you this. I mean, my uncle would always talk about Admiral Byrd in the 80s. I had no clue what the heck he was talking about, but I did have a tape cassette of a story, and it was Admiral Byrd's story. I remember it because I would play it. Like you had your first record player, I had a tape cassette, and it was like a recording of a recording, and it was Admiral Byrd. Here's the thing. I remember having the cassette tape. I don't remember the story the way it was told by him. If it's told like he saw aliens or if it was just, "Hey, I'm in frozen weather and I got to get back." But I remember that. And my uncle would always talk about Planet X. He would always talk about that. And I was like, what the heck is that? And here we are now, 2025, still talking about those things, but Poltergeist gave me the creeps, and Close Encounters gave me the creeps. And who knows if those aren't keys in movie theaters that open up our minds. Some of us say it's just Hollywood. Some of us say that really happened. How many times do we hear abduction stories that kind of sound like they're from the movies, The Matrix? We see The Matrix. Are we living in The Matrix? Do we manifest it? Are we not manifesting it? I don't know, but if these fears do push people to become better, then that's fine. But we also know that there are probably murderers that said, I think Charlie Manson, that they have voices in his head. Aleister Crowley with that thing that he drew, that alien-looking thing that he drew.
Lamb.
Some people say that door opened up, the lamb. So who knows? It's interesting, if I'll use a movie reference. I really try not to, but the virus twins in the Matrix, that they kind of infect, and they're white, they look like ghosts, and they infect the Matrix. And maybe that's really what we have around here. Some of us are lucky enough to get a kick in the ass, face our fears, and we move along. And some of us stay stuck in the same dream, in the same torture, to be, to come back on the wheel of Sam or whatever it is on the wheel. Who knows, man? Who knows?
That's why we talk about it. That's why we talk about it, man, because this type of stuff, if we're not considering it, then what the hell are we considering? There's so much out there that's changing so quickly, and the information flowing through our brains is just way too much. That hey, we have to say something. We have to say something. And yeah. And thank you for sharing the experience, because that's incredible. The all of it as usual, man. You're the best. We got about a couple minutes left. Go ahead and finish up.
So so I'm going to try to watch. I guess season 2 came out of The Sandman, and it's just brooding, and I like it, but it is about gods manifesting, or if you were a god. I always bring up American Gods. American Gods, the first season was excellent because it's the battle of old gods and belief, and the battle of new gods, and how those things change throughout time. How fairies have become aliens. What did Moses see? What did Ezekiel say? Did they really see those things, or were they just taking peyote and drugs? Who the hell knows? But affirmations and belief could change you maybe internally in your heart. If you see something else more than that, then you're really praying hard. God, good luck to you if you're actually making these things appear, or making shadow people appear, or making things that are positive appear. I don't know. But anyway, I'll leave you at that. I hope everybody has a good week. Back to the grind tomorrow. So,
you and me both. Appreciate you very much. Thanks for staying up late with us. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great night.
All right. Good night.
You're the best. You know me, love him. Joe in Florida. Been a good friend for a long time. Shout out Kelly. I always lump them together, because if anybody ever called us first and called back, it was Kelly, and Joe was next. And they've been good friends for literally years. We're talking 7 years-ish. And always great ideas, and always willing to entertain some things that may seem uncomfortable at times. And that's really the point of this. So I appreciate you, Joe. Thanks again for dipping in and sharing your experiences with us. Lots in play here. And I had an idea, but I forgot what it was. It'll come to me in a second here. As usual, right? The ideas, they come and go. They flow through you. James, I saw your link there. We'll talk about that when we get back. I think it's massively fascinating and definitely fits into this conversation tonight. So thanks for pulling that up, the Google Ngram thing. But yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I'm calling it Trial by Monster, Architecture of Psychic Tension. So it is sort of another way to look at that pop-out Tolpoid theory. But also, without any of that, we're still dealing with these things, this psychic tension, on a daily basis. What does it mean? Is it possible to quantify it? Is it possible to challenge it directly and overcome our demons, as they say? 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. Be right back. More Troubled Minds on the way. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. We are broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting, which you can find at troubledminds.org. Just click, go to troubledminds.org, scroll up to the very top, and just click play. It's very simple. It's the black button on top says listen live, and we do broadcast live on that. So if you're having problems, don't want to, pay for a streaming affair to hear the show live, that's free. You just go there to the website and press play, and you can hear it live. We're also on 88.4 FM Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we're getting weird, as usual. What if the monsters we fear are not intrusions, but assignments? Personalized trials scripted by something ancient, eternal, or watching us, watchers, for instance. I don't know. I think it's incredibly important to look at these ideas in different ways. And that's why I'm not like Troubled Minds was never intended to be like a vanilla UFO show. I mean, UFOs are fascinating as hell just because of the different ways you can consider what they might be. But I mean, the vanilla UFO shows out there, no offense, guys, no offense. But seriously, like 10 years later, we're still talking about the same crap. Seriously? Think about how wide and varied the entire conversation is outside of the UFO space. This is fascinating to me and what we talk about. That crap, I'm sorry, I can't. I turn it on and I'm like, like punch myself in the face. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. No more. Mike, stop throwing shade at the UFO podcasters. Anyway, Trial by Monster, I'm calling this. Architecture of psychic tension. Now, that's the point. Is it possible to have some kind of entity latch onto you, as Joe was describing, like a homunculus, as we've described in the past, or some shadow entity, or who knows, like the devil on your shoulder versus the angel gains dominion for a moment? I mean, these are the types of things that make you wonder about human behavior, about not just individuals, but of course the larger groups, and then of course the zeitgeist itself. What does it mean? And to the Google Ngrams bit, I'll let James lead this in because this is fantastic, and thank you for pulling that up. But it's a weird thing to consider. Like I said, if you go back to, the 1500s, and we're talking a succubus or an incubus sitting on your chest in a sleep paralysis experience, those are the demons they invoked and described. But suddenly, in about 1985, that took a turn for something entirely different. We'll look at this in a second, but also welcome back, James. Thank you for pulling this up. I'm glad you took the minute to do it because again, so many things happening at once. I can't do all the things, so I appreciate the help. But welcome back. What about this Google Ngrams? What do you know about it? And let's talk.
Yeah, it was just bugging me because I remember we talked about before, and I had seen it, and it's fascinating to me because this Google Ngrams thing, it's about basically the number of times that certain words or phrases have come up in or have appeared in books, going back as far as there's records of books, and they've been put online or whatever. I don't know for sure, but if you look at that, for those that can look at the graph there, it shows everything is pretty flat right near the bottom of the scale, as in not much mentions of anything to do with directly alien abductions at all, until you get to like Mike said there, right around the 1980s. And to me, the reason that is fascinating is I've heard of things here and there, experiences. I mean, the whole Betty and Barney Hill experience that we've talked about before on the show, and it's one of the most well-known ones. That happened, back in the 60s, early 60s. So there's been other events that have happened where the idea has been out there to a degree, but not to the degree that it came out later on in the 80s, let's say, based on that graph there. You can probably tell me better than I can, but it looks like it's right around 80s that really just takes, I mean, it takes off. The number of mentions just skyrockets. If you look at that graph there.
Yeah, right about 1983. It just goes nuts. And the weird part is, I'm going to look it up right now, but Betty and Barney Hill was in the 60s, right? And so you would expect for there to be some sort of spike in the zeitgeist with that. It was the first actual sort of publicized UFO abduction experience that was, quote, credible. You decide. Like I'm not the arbiter of truth, and I'm not going to say whether it's real or not. As I said in the past, I've listened to their regression tapes, and they're terrifying. So I believe that they believe that happened. What actually happened, who knows? Because all manner of things can really be looked at in that sense of, maybe they were screwed with somehow. Maybe there was a psyop happening with them directly. Like maybe they were test subjects of, who knows? Like it's impossible to say. However, their actual hypnotic regressions were terrifying to listen to because they were legitimately frightened for their lives. and you could just tell in the tensions on their voice and when they were retelling it. It's absolutely wild. But here's the thing. So that's back in, what was it? Hold on. Betty and Barney Hill.
I think it was 61.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay. We'll say 61. Just, I believe you. I didn't look it up myself. 1961. Here you go. Check it out. There's still a very flat graph there in 1961. Like there's a little spike in 63, 66, and then it just goes back to almost zero. And so again, this is not the internet. Clearly this is pre-internet, but it was mentioned in books. Okay. Then all of a sudden in like 1980, 81, 82, after the Spielberg stuff and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the term in literature, alien abduction, spiked like crazy. If you were a crypto miner and you're mining forever and then suddenly this happened, you would be a rich, wealthy individual. That's how crazy this graph is. And so it makes me wonder what happened in that moment, the early to mid 80s. I know Whitley Strieber released Communion, but beyond that, I mean, there wasn't like a massive spike in aliens per se. Like there wasn't a big alien movie other than, Close Encounters. And is that enough? And suddenly it's in our minds, it's in the zeitgeist. People are thinking about it. People are talking about it. And so as I described, maybe those demons of old, the incubus, the succubus, and that sleep paralysis experience now become the modern version, which is aliens, which are these gray aliens of Lamb and Aleister Crowley. I mean, I don't know. It's weird, right? And looking at this graph, like I said, suddenly there's a massive interest, almost as if a switch was turned on. It's a wild thing to consider. What makes that happen, and why are we talking about it now? Thank you. Thanks for pulling that up, James. What else you got on that?
Yeah, I think it's because I think it's a combination of just people, whether anyone wants to believe it or not, people claiming to have had experiences for years before that. Another amazing factor about not really a fact, thing I've heard about, because I didn't do a scientific study, and that's not to pick on science. I'm just saying, when it comes to Communion, the alien that's featured on the cover of Communion, I've heard and read accounts of people saying, I had this weird experience or something I couldn't explain, and then years later I saw the cover of Communion, and that's what I saw before. That's what I experienced. And there are people that will not look at that cover of that book. They just get too creeped out, and there's this reaction to it that, it seems like on first glance, like it's a book cover. It's just a paper with an image on it. But there's something about that, either within people's minds or within the energy around them or the book, or I don't know, that where there is an actual, just people do not want to look at the cover in a lot of cases. And I've heard this over and over again.
And so I falsely attributed maybe this spike to Communion, but I'm looking at it now on Wikipedia, and it was released in 1987. So this spike was happening before that fact, before he actually released this book. And there's the, if you guys are watching the stream, there's the Communion cover, and it is very striking, and it is very what everybody sees as this, almond-eyed alien with the almost no nose and the tiny mouth and all the rest. That very, very strikingly looks like Lamb from the Crowley days. I mean, this is weird, except Lamb had the bigger head. This has a kind of a smaller head. But yeah, I've never read the book, and I've seen the cover, and it always kind of gave me the creeps a little bit, like James is saying. And I wonder why. I wonder if this is something we've been dealing with sort of in the maybe dreamscape, something like that, right? Like that, like a Cthulhu type entity. I don't know, like Lamb or something. It's weird. All of this is incredibly weird. And why do these spikes happen in a particular moment? So this is released in 1987. The spike in the alien stuff on Google Ngrams really started happening in like 82, 83. You could kind of correlate that with, Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But then, but it's been nuts ever since. It's just been climbing up and up and up and up. Like, how do we quantify that? And is this the new succubus, the new incubus? That really becomes the question of the sleep paralysis aspect. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, there's so many accounts of people having experiences way before any of this happened. Also, I wanted to point out a couple of things as well from Joe's call, real quick. He mentioned his friend that had that sighting of that shadow figure, Hatman. I've heard of similar accounts where people see things or sense presences, and they get a sense of something they're supposed to do, even if there's not a direct, let's say, a spoken communication or words. They get the sense of they have to do this one thing or two things or whatever. And after they do it, after things have changed, they don't ever see that figure again, whatever it is they saw. So that is not completely unheard of either. And there was one other thing, and now I've forgotten. So we'll just leave that for another time.
That's okay. That's the way it happens. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Let's add the wrinkle to it. Why do you think in the early 80s, 1982, 83, there was this massive spike in the term alien abduction? Was it close encounters? How do these ideas filter into the zeitgeist and then everybody starts writing about them? Clearly, it couldn't be that everybody had this experience, right? But what if they did? And what if it was sort of a latent awakening of an experience that nobody knew how to put their finger on? And suddenly we're like, yeah, Whitley Strieber, Communion, again, 1987. And so let me, on the graph here, 1987's right about there. So it's, I mean, maybe correlates. It's in the very early curve of this graph. But it seems strange to me that suddenly, and when we did this the first time, we did this one time before, probably a year ago, that there's also a little lump here. And I want to find what this is, because if you look alien abduction and go all the way back to 1500, right, on Google Ngrams, there's nothing. It's 0%, 0. You know what's nuts? In 1842, there's a little bump. There's a little bump that goes until about 1850 before it goes back to 0. You guys can see that graph there, that little tiny, yeah. So, but then it goes back to 0 for a long time until the early 80s, where it spikes like crazy, as you guys can see on the graph. So what is that? What the hell is that? Like, I want to go find out what that is. If anybody knows what that is, I want to know, because did alien abduction mean something else in 1844? Because if it didn't, what is that? This is a wild thing. Yeah, right. Exactly. Of all things, 1844. Who knows what was going on in 1844? I'd have to dig in a little bit. I can't remember, because of course I wasn't born yet. Wasn't even a twinkle in Grandpappy's eye at that point. So I don't know. It's weird. This is a weird thing. And so, of course, as usual, how do we quantify these things as modern humans in 2025? That becomes the real question. You got your thought back, James, or do we delve into the depths here?
Oh, actually, I do. The whole idea of attachments or of energy, people being able to sense energy, I do believe in that. I've had that before where there have been people around where I did not feel good. I did not feel good energy coming from them. And I don't know if it was, again, an attachment or not. I'm sensitive at times, apparently, but not so much to where I know what's going on. But I've heard of accounts of people that can see these attachments or can see auras, not just once in a while like some people do, but like just all the time, and can see if there's attachments that are going on. So I don't discount those things being possible either. Just I've heard too much about that over the years. So that was the other thing I remembered finally.
Right on. All good. I knew if I rambled on for a second, it would come back. It happens to me all the time. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on a little bit into this. And again, I'll link this. This is from Perplexity. 100 links of the question I asked of you guys when we started tonight, which is on Twitter X. Thank you for following in all the places. Appreciate that. But this is what we're talking about. This will boil it down to what we mean and bringing up this Google Ngrams. And thank you, James, for pulling that up. It was something that kind of came to mind as an afterthought in this conversation. But it's very real. The zeitgeist changes, and suddenly these new ideas are on people's minds. And whether they talk about them at water coolers, because let's be honest, how many of you folks talk about aliens at your water cooler at work? Right? Because you seem like a quack if you do. Nobody wants to talk about that. But my view of aliens is very, very deep and nuanced, and I can see it in so many different ways. Not because I'm some mystic or some guru or super smart or anything, because I've talked to you guys about it for years. And we've looked at this from every angle possible. And I think it's endlessly fascinating because I don't think it's as simple as the little green men from Alpha Centauri. That's the whole point. But anyway, so in this case, we're talking about the trial by monster, architecture of psychic tension. The temporary dissolution of ego boundaries during intense fear states allows access to deeper layers of consciousness, typically filtered by normal awareness. And this is from that study, multiple studies. This matches descriptions from ancient mystery school initiations, where controlled terror was used to shatter ordinary perception and enable direct spiritual experience. I'm going to read that again. This is important. We're going to get to the Eleusinian mysteries, as I believe how you say it. This matches descriptions from ancient mystery school initiations, where controlled terror was used to shatter ordinary perception and enable direct spiritual experience. Okay? Which, of course, is this. Link's going to be in the description below, and I encourage you to look into it and read up on this if you're interested in the ideas. As usual, look, what I do is I look at a bunch of different things or bring the ideas together into one single space to talk to you guys about it. I could literally go on for 5 hours by myself. I don't like to do it. It's exhausting, and it's more fun to talk to you guys about these ideas. I have link after link after link, idea after idea stacked up on top of each other. Even though I seem overly repetitive sometimes, it's to get you guys to call and talk about these ideas. But anyway, this is from EleusinianMysteries.org, as you would expect. But the Eleusinian Mysteries and metanoia. You ever heard this term, metanoia? Introducing transformation through ritual. I'm going to read straight from the article here, and it is linked in the description. I encourage you to read in full. So the Eleusinian Mysteries, ancient initiation rituals held in honor of the goddesses Demeter and Persephone, induced an artificial crisis in participants that led to a profound change in consciousness. Metanoia. Through extensive immersion in ritual behavior, initiates underwent psychological and neurological transformations facilitated by arousal and quiescent states, how do you say that, associated with altered consciousness. Quiescent, quiescent, I don't even know what that word is. Anyway, this paper explores the phenomenology of this religious experience and the cosmological beliefs that underpinned it. And so here we go. So the context, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the definition is metanoia is a Greek term that combines meta, meaning beyond or after, and noia, meaning mind or thought. Traditionally translated as repentance, the term carries a deeper significance in the context of the mysteries, a radical transformation of one's inner being. It signifies a shift in understanding, a reorientation of one's entire approach to life, and an awakening to a new reality. Sound familiar? In the Eleusinian Mysteries, metanoia was not simply about moral repentance, but about an ontological change. Sound familiar? A profound realization of the truths of existence, the nature of the divine, and one's place in the cosmos. This transformation was achieved through direct experience rather than intellectual instruction. Yeah, wild stuff. And this is new. I didn't know this until tonight. I was kind of just digging through and going through some of this information. I was like, whoa, this is wild. I love this. But basically, inducing that ontological shock. There's the term. There's the UFO term. Ontological shock in initiates to sort of break their paradigm of Normieville. I'm ad-libbing Normieville. And recognizing that there's a more profound version of humanity and of ascension of ideas and ascension of a larger and greater zeitgeist collectively. Sound familiar? All of this sounds very familiar to me, but interestingly, this is one of those ancient mystery schools that we don't know a ton about. And that is the wild part of this. So they got a 9-day ritual experience. I'm going to read this in a sec. Anything on that, James? I see APOC will go to you at the bottom of the hour, so we don't have to cut you off. Anything on that, James? And I'm going to read the 9-day ritual experience I go through here.
It's probably too much to go into just real quick, so I'll save it for later if there's time.
Okay, perfect. Check this out. So a reconstruction of the ritual experience. Links in the description if you want to read up on this. Imagine a multitude gathering 2,500 years ago. After days of preparation and fasting, processions wind between Athens and Eleusis, filled with a growing sense of anticipation. As dusk falls, thousands of torches blaze under darkening skies. The Milky Way gleams overhead, and a sliver of the moon provides scant light. Initiates simp the Kykeon, that's Kykeon, a ceremonial drink believed to open the mind to the divine. Hey, you got a pregame, right? Individually and then collectively, they are thrust into frenetic dances. The crowd presses on all sides, movement dictated by the surge of people. In the darkness, they run in circles over uncertain paths, engulfed by mindless, hyperkinetic activity. The atmosphere is charged with fear and excitement. The pressing crowd induces claustrophobia and panic. Shadowy figures leap from the darkness and startle and direct the masses. Amidst the chaos, a door appears, a gateway to the initiation hall. Exhausted from lack of sleep, fasting, and terror, initiates enter a darkened chamber. Above, the Hierophant appears. Silence falls. A thunderous gong reverberates. Suddenly, an enormous burst of flame illuminates the hall seen for miles around. Within this transformative space, a goddess and other apparitions appear. Joy and celebration follow. As the night concludes, initiates emerge feeling like strangers to themselves, experiencing a profound metanoia, a change in perception that alters their understanding of the world and their place within it. This transformation is not temporary, but has lasting effects, influencing their beliefs, behaviors, and interactions with others. And when I saw this, my eyes were popping out of my head, and I was like, yeah, I'm onto something. There's something here, right? Which is the basis of breaking down the normie vision of reality. And if they were doing this thousands of years ago, there's something to it. We've talked about the shamanic journey. We've talked about Terence McKenna. We've talked about all of these wild ideas of breaking down where we came from versus where we're heading. And you define that however you like. However, it seems pretty poignant that this is an ancient idea. And I wonder if, in a ritual sense, ontological shock and aliens in 2025 are a larger version of this ritual. Somewhere in between? Real? Nah? I don't know. Anything on that, James? Got about a minute.
I was just thinking the whole time as you were reading that. So I was thinking about people that run and go on paranormal investigations of haunted houses. I was thinking about people that go looking for cryptids, creatures, or UFOs or aliens out there. One thing that all those have in common is it's all people. They're all thinking about these things. They're all wondering about them, even if they're trying to disprove or whatever they're trying to do. And a lot of times there's these weird events that happen not just during, but after these events, after people get home from going to these events. And it was really weird how I was thinking about all these things as you're reading this other event, about this other event from way back when. And it's funny how similar all that kind of sounds.
In 2025.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, I know that the actual Eleusinian Mysteries is one of those things kind of buried in history. And so we don't know a ton about it. So is this accurate? Like, I don't know. I can't vouch for things that happened 3,000 years ago. However, it's an interesting parallel to exactly what we're talking about tonight. So what do you know about it? How weird does it get? Is the alien manifestation in 1982, 1983 in Google Ngrams a perfect representation in terms of exactly what we're talking about tonight? The Eleusinian Mysteries, in this case, and something known as metanoia. Love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubledminds.org. This is Troubled Minds. I'm Michael Strange. Be right back. We got APOC on the line coming up. More from James and your calls as well. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Troubled Minds. I'm your host, Michael Strange. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch, and Kick. I keep wanting to say D-Line. And we're broadcasting live on the Troubled Minds Radio Network. That's KUAP Digital Broadcasting. And, of course, 88.4 FM Auckland, New Zealand. Tonight, we're talking monsters. Yeah, trial by monster. The architecture of psychic tension. And how come in the 1500s they were talking about the incubus and the succubus as part of that, what is it, the sleep paralysis experience. But in 2025, we're talking about aliens. It's weird, right? It's a very strange thing. And again, looking at Google Ngrams, shout out James for pulling this up and validating what I was saying. We've talked about this in the past, that the term alien abduction in literature, not the internet, this is pre-internet, this goes all the way back to 1500, that it started spiking in like 1981. And if you see the graph, I'll have this linked in the description as well if you want to check it out. Search it yourself. Go to Google Books Ngram Viewer and search alien abduction, and you'll see your eyes will pop out of your head just like it did my first time when I was looking into this. But why? Why has this surged in the zeitgeist? And is it maybe that we've been experiencing this for longer than we think and suddenly recognized it? Or is this part of a larger psyop, as usual, that I like to consider as well? Because, of course, considering all the angles. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts on this. That's why we do this, is to talk to regular people about extraordinary ideas. Anything to add to that, James? And we'll go to APOC.
Yeah, just that I want to sort of elaborate real quick on what I mentioned just before the break. You know, even if when you have these big gatherings of people that are going to go on any of these kinds of adventures or whatever you want to consider them, you're going to have all different views on whatever's happening there. You're going to have people that don't think any of it is real, you know, all these things. So that's a lot of energy from the people that are involved before you even get to whatever else might be there. So even if, let's say, if some people don't think that anything paranormal is real at all, even without that, that's still a lot of thoughts and emotions and energy that people are going through and having while they're going to these different kinds of events that are almost like ceremonies in a way, or rituals in a way.
Yeah, the Eleusinian mysteries of metanoia, that the ritual of sort of breaking down the psyche to reemerge as a true spiritual being. It's a wonderful idea, but also I wonder what kind of hazing process that was. It may not have been good, because you know how people like to get with their ridiculous hazing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it does definitely fits into this. And what are we dealing with, and how weird does it get? That really becomes a question. Do check out the write-up if you guys haven't yet, because it is very good and there's a lot of wild ideas in it. And as I've always said, this is pretty cool because like I do like a nice framework, a write-up of things to talk about, but then also, which becomes its own sort of art piece. But then we also do this together, which becomes a separate companion piece, because callers take this wherever we take it. And that's why we do it. If you want to be part of the conversation, love to hear your thoughts. 702-957-1037. Click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. APOC on the Discord. What's up? Are you there? All you got to do is unmute. Welcome to the joint.
I'm here. Hi.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. So, I have a couple of things that might connect to the first part of the show, which is kind of finding meaning in this concept of things, fear-based things, I guess, you know, related to what all of us go through in life. And one of the things that I'm connecting in this is this book that I read as a child that a lot of people did, that they turned into a movie not too long ago, but it's Where the Wild Things Are. You remember that?
I remember the book. I never saw the movie, but I remember the book when I was young. Yeah.
The book was great and the movie was better. And it's interesting because the idea there was that the monsters were in the shadows. You know, it was just the things that you thought you were afraid of because you didn't know what they were about, right? And Whitley Strieber, when he had the person design the picture or the image on the book, it was intended to be a mask, because in the story it's a mask. And there we go with the sort of idea of things being there but not being revealed, I guess, just being hidden, right? And so in the end of his book, when or in the end of one of the abductions, toward the end, the mask came off, and what was underneath it was this grotesque thing, but it was just abstractly strange. It wasn't that he was afraid of it. It was more like it was afraid of him seeing it without a mask in a way that I don't think that comes about in the top of the story, but I think it's layered in there in a way. And then I had a really interesting experience with a dream that this is reminding me of. Would you like me to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Love to hear it.
Okay. So, the dream was, I'm going to try to condense this because it was extremely long. But I was in a school in the beginning, and the school opened up in the back to a cage, and I found myself with another girl holding on to this huge bar that was part of the cage, and beyond that cage was darkness, and in the darkness came this growl, sort of, in this shadow of a face of what became a dragon. And it was, at first you wanted to get away from it, so we dropped down a couple of levels in the dream, and it did it again, and we dropped down a couple more levels because the idea was this thing was going to eat us, right? That was the preservation strategy that was that human beings have to stay away from something that has bigger teeth than you do. And so on the third growl, she dropped down, and I just grabbed onto the bar, and I'm like, nope, I'm not moving. And it laughed and floated away. And so I got down to a different level, and all of these people were sort of trapped in the school, right? They were trapped 2 or 3 or 5 levels down, excuse me, in this just concrete room, and the light was coming from above. And again, there was still this cage on the other side, but it was more illumined on the other side, where you could see the dragon every once in a while when it would float around, and it would come by. And when it did, all the people were terrified of it. And I was trying to help them figure out what they were doing and help them, figure out how to get out of the room. And they just were so focused on all the small things, all the sort of menial bits, that when the dragon came up, rather than sort of thinking about the dragon in a more abstract way, they thought of the dragon as something to fear because they were in a fight or flight mode. And at some point, after a lot of effort, I decided, okay, I'm not going to give any assistance to these people. I can't help them. I can't do anything. And so as I sort of released that, the dragon came in, and all kind of happened at once. So the dragon was actually laying there on this side of the cage, waiting for me to sort of decide. And I decided that they weren't gonna, they weren't gonna take my help, or they weren't going to try to help, and they were just gonna sort of be in there and suffer. And so I went and jumped on the back of the dragon, and the dragon took me and floated me into another dimension and dropped me off, and there I was in this hallway. And I realized that the Tao was always in action. There was always this give and take, this thing that was there. And that's partly why I like the Taoism as a sort of idea. But I think if we look at fear as as something more. There are phobias, and I think that's what you're getting more into in the show. And then there are fears which keep us alive, right? So there's a fight or flight that we need in order to make a decision quickly to get away from something or to stay in something. And then there's a decision making fear, I suppose, when we're in a situation that's not life threatening or that we don't know whether it is or not, and we're going to make a decision about that. And then there's the philosophical fear about ourselves, I think. And that's where we're we're looking through a number of different lenses at ourselves and the world, because we can't really separate that when we're looking at ourselves, I think, maybe. And then we're attempting to do something on that level. So I think it really depends on what you're talking about as to the meaning of fears, and I think it depends on everyone individually as to how they sort of translate their own ideas about it and their own experiences in life.
Well said. And yes, exactly. So my job isn't to bring a direct path to any truth. It's to fractalize truth and talk about it. And you found me out. You found me out. I don't really know. But here's the thing too, regarding that aspect of fight or flight, but then also sort of the long-term aspect of the hero's journey that we always talk about. They are different things, but it is sort of based in the same emotive aspect of the runes of Odin, of fear in some capacity. And I think that's why this is important to talk about and say that, look, there are these entities that are out there. And whether you believe them or not, as James was saying too, is as usual with me, you guys know me. I try to be as agnostic in all the ways as possible. Hey, aliens are real or they're not. Aliens are here or they're not. Okay. If you can see two sides of every equation and then fractalize that, it kind of gives you a superpower because you can kind of see through some of the smoke and mirrors as they happen and talk about them with your friends about Wild Ideas by Dark of Night. Now, back to the Eleusinian mysteries here as part of this. Now, the metanoia and sort of the breaking, I mean, this reminds me of the Marine Corps and the boot camp of the Marines. My brother, love him to death, shout out, he went to the Marine Corps, Camp Pendleton. He told me about it after the fact, and it was horrific. It was they were literally breaking you down into a state of maybe metanoia of the Eleusinian mysteries, of a mystery school of ancient times, and then bringing you out as a soldier, as a killer, as a follow orders or people die. I wonder, this is the same sort of aspect we've been dealing with for thousands of years. Am I right?
That's an interesting loop that was just made there. School system was based on the military system, right? And my dream started with a school room. And I find that sort of interesting. I think the hall at the end was potentially a school room, but it was open and it led to many doors instead of just being in one school room, right? So there was that duality there. And the militaristic or the, breaking one down to build one up thing only works with a certain type of people, it seems, and it only works if somebody shuts off parts of themselves in order for it to work. And that's sort of part of the program, right? You have to you have to be willing to crush that exquisite sense of the ability to sort of perceive awe and the ability to perceive surprise and the ability to feel deep emotions and the ability to express yourself in a really true and authentic way, because you're entrained at that point. I was just talking to my mom about dog training and rat training, and that one of the reasons I didn't train my dogs in such a deep way is because I wanted them to be able to tell me when they didn't like something, when they didn't want to do something, right? Instead of just doing what they were told. So I succeeded at not training my dogs, by the way, but that's the reason, right, that I did that. And I am still glad for it. But they're great at tricks and stuff like that. You know, they like to do the things I do.
Fair
But
enough.
I think
I've also
go ahead.
succeeded at not training my dog, by the way. Go ahead.
But
I have as
but
well by not having a dog.
Damn it, James.
right. And your cat just trains you, so you're fine
Yes.
there, James.
Sorry. Yeah.
But when you look at the nature of, I got to a point at one point in my life, and it was sort of a, you know, I was going through Kundalini stuff and whatever you want to define that. I still put that word in quotations because I think everybody experiences life, including those things, in different ways. And so I got to a certain point where it's just there was absolutely no fear in me whatsoever. And I'm driving down a deserted road like I like to do. And this bird was walking across the road with some babies, right? And I think it was a quail or something. And I froze up for some reason. And it wasn't that I froze up, I just didn't react like I would have in a natural space for me and in a way that I could have preserved the life of these poor little birds, because I think I ran over one. I'm not certain of it, but I kept going. And the thing is, with fight or flight, that's sort of the primal animal reactive thing that allows us to quickly respond to a physical thing that's in our view at the time. Now, the sort of philosophical relationship between us and fear, I think, are the decisions that we make intellectually and the decisions that we make about the bigger items in life, not sort of the quick fight or flight responses. So I actually think it's very different. I think that you were saying that it's similar, that it does sort of fractal up and down, and it does to a degree. And I mean, I can see that too, but also I can see a huge difference, because if we're looking at the bigger picture, we're looking at freedom versus slavery. We're looking at evolution versus de-evolution, right? We're looking at the bigger story. And so if we're addressing our fears in that way, that's not a reactive, responsive sort of thing that we do. That's a choice that we take on and ponder and think about, and might be questioning for the rest of our life various elements of those different questions, right? Like, what are all these things, and how do I make a difference? And I think that being transparently true to who you are and authentic and real is granting other people freedom to be who they are around you. And I think that's all we can hope for in the microcosm, I suppose. But it could lead to that macrocosm if enough people do it. I don't know, because I don't know. I don't know anything. But
as Aristotle also doesn't know anything, which is fine by me too.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's an interesting topic, interesting show.
Thank you. And interesting call. Anything for APOC, James, as we wind this down?
Yeah, just sorry I interrupted there, but I couldn't help it making the cat joke. Yeah, I definitely can see differences between sort of that fight or flight versus other, I guess, more intellectual kind of fears or things. So, but yeah, it's always good to hear from you, APOC, and I don't have much to say because I'm just you're amazing in that. I never know where to go after you talk because I'm just still trying to process everything. So good to hear from you as always.
Thank you, James. You too.
Still taking notes. Yeah. APOC, before we wrap this up, do you have a theory on why this Google Ngrams thing is the way it is, where the term alien abduction didn't fully enter the zeitgeist until 1982 or 83? You have a theory on that?
Okay, now we get into the maybe juice, right?
Let's hear it.
Deep into the maybe juice would be maybe that's when people started actually having those experiences and began to write them, or they might have started having them 5 years before and started writing about them in that year. I know that Whitley Strieber was experiencing them for I think 10 years prior to his writing the book. And he had to actually come out of the closet with that stuff to his family. He wasn't he just thought that they would look at him like he was absolutely mad, and he kind of thought of that potential himself, and so maybe that's when this experience of people thinking that they were being abducted was happening, whether it was real or not. There could have been a collective download of sorts, or a collective sort of mind meld. And that idea could have been coming into cognition, and they could have been having dreams or whatever, or it could have been actually happening. And if so, because of sort of the way that we seem to work as a collective, knowledge seems to come out at one time about certain things. And so it could have just easily been that's when it came out. It also could be that the name, and I think that this is probably a deeper dive, but I think that because you're looking at the specific words of alien abduction, I think if you look back and start naming different names, using different linguistics, different words to describe the same thing, you might hit on a few more mountains there with your search.
I think so too. You're right. And that's a whole, I think I'm not even joking. What you just described, we could do an entire year of different things, paranormal terms, sort of how they changed, all the rest of the stuff. So we're clearly using modern terms, but also, like I said, this will be linked in the description. Shout out James for peeling this out. We talked about this a ways back, but alien abduction itself is zero in Google Ngrams until about 1842. And it has a little blip, right? And then it just disappears and it's zero again. And this is books, clearly way pre-internet. But then around 1900, there's another little blip of discussion of it. And then it goes to zero, literally effectively zero forever until 1982-ish. And then it just goes nuts. Yeah. And so in the larger context of things, we're talking about the zeitgeist itself. We're talking about the noosphere of human ideas. And so my soft hypothesis, you know me, I don't like to be definitive about anything because I think it closes doors. But I think we're talking about the succubus and the incubus of old in a new space. I don't know. As usual, right? You put that in your back pocket. We'll debate that as we go in the temporal zeitgeist forward of troubled minds. But I don't know. I really don't know. But it seems like there's some correlation here sometimes. But like you said, APOC, as you start to maybe search different terms and kind of see how these kind of pop up in different spaces, I think it's interesting to look at the temporal zeitgeist and say, maybe this started happening in 1860 or something to a wide degree that maybe, just maybe, this has been something happening to us forever, and we're just finding new ways to describe it, to talk about it. I don't know.
Okay, I have some feedback for that.
Fire away.
also, because you again with Whitley Strieber, one of the things in his books and in his story is that the alien abduction is connected, or the alien visitations are connected intimately to ghostly visitations, to spiritual visitations. So people who would visit him at their cabin and stay overnight, if they had somebody who died, they would almost always see that person overnight along with the alien visitations. And they would have conversations with them. They would actually, there are a lot of stories like that. And Whitley had an experience with a person who he thought was a friend of his until he found out that that person had actually died prior to him seeing that person. And so it's if you really get into the Fortean nature of the thing, James, it seems to all be really intertwined. Even with the people who claim to only have one experience, usually they're tied up with all these other experiences. And so I'm not sure you can get real locked in on what is alien abduction and is it alien and all that either. And vice versa. I think that there's so much to all this stuff, and who knows what's actually happening.
As I like to say, it's complicated. That stuff is complicated, which is why, by the way, many people don't tackle this. They'd rather tell you who to vote for. Vote blue, vote red. Yeah, rah, rah, rah. Go kill the bad guys. That's way easier than looking at human consciousness over the course of 1,000 years or whatever. It's complicated as hell, which is why, as I've said in the past, what did JFK say? We don't do these things because they're easy. We do them because they're hard. Final thought. Let's wrap this up. Go ahead, APOC, and then we'll go to James and finish it up.
Well, this was a fun show, and I would just offer looking into the multitude of things and the many maybe becoming one. Maybe it's an experiencer challenge. Maybe it's what the people can recognize that they could accept. Maybe it's what people are willing to deal with. Maybe it's a combination of those things that come to them because they're on that level, of being able to accept it or deal with it on some level or another. I would, that's a fractal sort of thing, but also sort of an inner and external, an inner and outer, an internal and external thing as well. That's it. That's all.
Which is what it's all about. That's all. Oh, and glad to have you back. Always a pleasure. APOC, please give her a follow. Apocalypse Tau is the name of the podcast, is the name of the WordPress. Thank you to Sweets for sharing it in all the places. Appreciate that. You can also find APOC at troubledminds.org/friends. Very easy. Y'all are there. If you're not there, and you should be there, remember how you get on the friends list? It's an in list, not an out list. All right. Just help us. 1 iota. Call in sometimes, spread the word, let people know a conversation is happening, that blah, blah, blah. We're not going to tell you to vote for all this stuff. Retweet us here or there, whatever. If you want to be on this list, you should be on this list. troubledminds.org/friends. Click the friends. If you're on the website, scroll down a little bit. APOC alphabetically has an advantage right there. Hey, go give her a follow on all the places. And always a pleasure. An old friend, glad to have you back, and fire stuff as usual. You know what to do. Please go give her a follow in all the places. And that's the point of this, is to collaborate, to put minds together and consider ideas that have not yet been considered. Or have they? The more I dig into this stuff, by the way, the more I realize it's some visionary genius in like 1860 had already thought of this, or 1550, or I'm like, damn, who's that guy? Why was he talking about this way back then? I'm sure they tried to burn him at the stake or whatever. But anyway, welcome to 2025 in the United States, where at least they're not trying to burn us at the stake. Anyway, James, final thought. Dear God.
Yeah, great call from APOC. I do agree. From what I've heard and read, there's so many reports of people experiencing who experience one thing, let's say ghosts, they also experience aliens or UFOs. Another thing too, there are, if you look hard enough, you can find similarities between aliens and fae or fairies, and ghosts, fae or fairies and cryptids, creatures, Bigfoot. All these things do seem to be connected, or at least at times in different places and different ways. And I do think it's I would love to be able to do just the last thought on the different phrasing of things or different words. I would love to be able to take 2 or 3 or 4 different combinations of words and put them into that engram viewer to see if there's the graph looks the same for alien abductions versus fae encounters or abductions or all these things, vanishings, weird vanishings and disappearances, all these things. I would be curious if there's any kind of overarching trend that you could find if you could just put several things in there at the same time.
Yeah, actually, we could do that, by the way. Like I said, we could probably spend an entire year just doing this type of stuff and looking through the Google Ngrams literature aspect of particular terms. And it's fascinating as hell because as they come and go in the zeitgeist, you start to see maybe as they've changed, maybe this alien abduction now in 2025 that's spiked, or it goes up to 2022, I believe, it's spiking. But let's say it was sort of fae incursions or something like that. Maybe in 1600 that was spiking then. And so we could literally, I'm not kidding you, do an entire year of shows just on this, sort of looking into the temporal zeitgeist and wondering what was happening with it. And you guys let me know if you want to do a series on it or something, like a week worth of shows, or maybe one a month or one a week or something. We could totally do that because like I said, it's incredible to consider that these particular terms turn up at particular moments and become something. Again, what does that mean? I don't know. I think it's worthy of discussion. And I think that, by the way, nobody's done this yet. Nobody's really dug into this in that particular space. So if you're interested into that, in that idea of kind of going back and looking, again, it's Google. So, how much can we really trust Google? Let's say it quietly. But still, right, they scanned a ton of books and there's a bunch of wild ideas that we can kind of look into. And so, yeah. Anyway, so I want to know what happened in 1845 where alien abduction spiked a little bit. And I also want to know what happened in 1900 where alien abduction, the term, spiked a little bit. And everything else all the way back to 1500 is basically zero. It's weird, right? I'm going to dig into that. Remind me, James, 1850, 1900, what the hell happened back then where they were talking about alien abductions? Anyway, you're the best. As you know, appreciate you sitting in, the glue of the show. Always, when you're here, my anxiety dips because I know I got my wingman at least, and I appreciate you very much. You're the best.
No, always glad to be here. Yeah, the 1900 thing, just real quick, that is also when there were a lot of reports of UFOs, but there were also possibly just airships. They were, blimps that were being tested at the time. So I wonder, but that also does not account for abductions. So that's a weird timing there. But yeah, always glad whenever I'm able. I'm always glad to sit in with you and talk about these things, especially if I, have been looking into them before this. And it's nice to be able to put some of that research to good use.
As we have been, us weirdos, Weirdo Club Unite. Exactly the point. It's like imagine the coolest book club you've ever been part of. My name's Mike. This is Troubled Minds. This is James, the glue of the show, the paranormal expert of Troubled Minds. And go give him a follow. You know what to do. troubledminds.org/friends. Scroll down a little bit. Follow James Salcido paranormal.com. You spell it SALSIDO paranormal.com. Go check out his books. Go buy his books. Look, support the show. Support our friends. Support each other. Like I said, like I've always said, we're competitors, right? We're all competing for the information economy, for the attention economy. But what if we're not? What if instead we collaborate? What if instead we think about ideas together and point out interesting concepts that maybe each of us individually are missing? Weird, right? Weird, right? It is not necessary to stamp on each other's faces to get to the top. We can do it together. Please follow our friends. Go follow James. Follow the rest of our friends while you're down there. Like I said, if you've been listening for any amount of time and you have not followed the friends on that list, you're hurting my feelings. I mean that truly and deeply. So much energy and time goes into this show. It will take you like an hour, tops, to go follow all these people in all the places. And if you got some money to spend to go buy their books, the people who are selling books, like 95+% of that, it's all free. Please do that. It would makes my heart go around. Makes my, what's the term? Whatever the term is. Anyway, please help our friends. If you want to help Troubled Minds directly, you like the AI music, go check that out. Links in the description down there. Troubled Minds Greatest Hits. Shout out Rogue Topas, Matt's Allen, California. We're coming up with that term. I love it. And check it out. He says, by the way, he's got the CD. He says it passes the car test. So there's a digital version of that if you want the MP3s, or there's the actual old school physical that ships to the lower 48 states. Go check it out. Links are in the description down below. Troubledfans.com if you want to help buy a shirt, buy a hat, buy a whatever. I did buy a computer, by the way. So because I have an affinity for never paying full price for anything, there was a perfect 4th of July deal. I'm like, I can't wait on this, because if I miss this, I'm going to spend hundreds later, or maybe more than that. And so I bought it. So I did 12 months, no interest. I can pay for it outright. I'm not broke like that. But if you want to help me pay that off, I would appreciate it very much. Troubledfans.com. And the reason I say that is because Windows 10 is dying, and I'm still on a Windows 10 PC that's been middling for years. So anyway, I appreciate it very much. You know what to do. Spread the word. Let people know a conversation's happening. But we're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're going to look at ideas outside the box and be part of this together. As we finish, it goes exactly like this. Be sure, be strong, be true. Thank you for listening. From our troubled minds to yours, have a great night.